Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to all in attendance this evening. And to those who may be watching at a later date on video, a reminder that our council meetings, our meetings are taped, video recorded for presentation on our website. I want to acknowledge that we are meeting this evening in the territory of the Wasanic Nation. And I'd like to call to order the regular council meeting for Monday, January 28th. And we'll start with public participation. To those who may be new, coming up, we ask that you speak for 3 minutes and press the button on the microphone that brings on the red light. And I'll call if anyone would like to speak for a first time. If you could please give your name and address after pressing the button, please.
Is this the button?
Yep.
Okay. Ross Kemble, 9613 8th Street. I'm here tonight in sort of a different situation where I have neighbors who want to have an variance again to their whatever their project that they want to do. I don't know the severity of it, but I'm getting very concerned of the way some of this development is going on. I'm talking of height. I'm talking of people's homes being devaluated. I am not saying, please, I am not saying that they are devaluating the neighborhood. I haven't seen their plans. I don't like the fact all the trees are going. But this whole last council is just kind of cut it down, build it, and that damn thing we've got on First Street, that big white Taj Mahal, how the hell that would ever go through is beyond my belief. That the town would be so insensitive to the citizen. Would you please, if you're going to allow variances, make sure that that fits into the area where it's being built. We're tired of this fait accompli, it's gone. I said to one councillor, and I got hell and he was very upset with me, I said, you know, what happens is that the developer comes in and he says to the town of Sydney, jump. Town of Sydney says, how high? Stop saying how high and put direction into development. Thank you.
We appreciate your comments, Mr. Campbell. With respect, we do have processes for development that we're required to have legislatively, and we do process. I appreciate there is public opinion who's concerned about development.
Excuse me, sir. That some of your processes are not working. Now you've got to face that reality. They might have been good when the horse and buggy was around, but they're not good now. Because of the change of architecture, height, oh my God, that's a sore one. You've got to get it under control. And a bylaw is a bylaw. And what some of you are doing is you're hiding behind those bylaws to get what you want. Please, council. Thank you.
Thank you. We'll call for a second time anyone wishing to speak this evening.
Hello, my name is Bill Collins, 2028 Westbrook Drive in the Green Glade area of West Sydney. I have two things to say tonight, and they're both with respect to the budget deliberations that the council have started. Number one, as a resident of Westbrook Drive in Green Glade, directly across from Ray Creek Pond and Ray Creek, I want to urge council to consider favorably whatever is necessary to ensure the pond remains, which means ensure that the dam remains. So if council could consider favorably whatever means necessary to ensure the money is allocated in the budget. In the event that the dam has to be replaced, we ask as residents that council pays for whatever it needs to pay for. And including in this year's budget deliberation, the work that staff has suggested necessary to ensure the competency, or at least the core of the initial dam. So that's also something we ask you to consider favorably. Secondly, I want to mention with a business hat. Council may know I'm a business owner on the peninsula, and say the last decade my company has brought in probably north of $90 million in foreign revenue to be spent by the engineers and staff at my company in grocery stores, in business, in retail in general. And in discussions about economic development, I see the council's being asked by the South Island Prosperity Project to continue to contribute to that agency in support of Greater Victoria, or South Island even, economic development. I suggest that we have enough very smart people directly in Sydney, North Saanich and Central Saanich to properly dictate what happens to economic development and the specific needs of our region. So I would urge council not to accept that proposal and to look to our local community to support the economic development needs of what we have here. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Collins. Please. Sorry, if you want to just press one more time there.
Oh, it was still on.
Yeah. And your name and address?
Steve Smith, 10148 Bower Bank Road. We have a variance application in. It's on item 14. I'm just wanted to bring up that the only reason we're put in the variance is because the staff told us that that bylaw that stopped us from building the addition size is going to be changed in 2 or 3 months. But they told us we could speed things up by putting in a variance. We were given a bit of wrong information in the summertime about what we were allowed out front, and after spending quite a bit of money doing the plans, we found out it was in violation of the bylaw. So I just wanted to bring up that staff has told us they're planning on changing that bylaw anyway to allow that development. So.
Yeah, that was included in our staff report, but thank you for your
Sure.
comments this evening. Thank you. I'll call for a third and final time. Anyone wishing to speak tonight? Seeing none, I'll close public participation and move on to presentations. We have the 2018 year-end policing report from Staff Sergeant Wayne Conley, our detachment commander for the Sydney North Saanich RCMP branch. Good evening, Mr. Conley.
Good evening, Mayor and Council members. Happy to be here to give you a brief 2018 year-end policing report for the community. I would start by just a few comments about the current status of resources. So in 2018, we saw several changes with our municipal employee support staff. We lost 4 municipal employees as a result of retirements and moves, but we've been successful in having 3 of the 4 replaced, and we're just waiting at this point for our office manager, who is retiring, for the new person to have her security clearance, and then we can have that position filled as well. And on the officer side, as you know, we have 15 officers that are paid for by the municipality of Sydney, and we have 4 officers that are designated for transfer over the next few months, pursuing career opportunities within the RCMP. Corporal Chris Manso is going to Headquarters Strategic Communications. He's been our media liaison. I'm sorry to be losing him. Constable Kathleen Byron is going to Forensic Identification Services in Victoria. Constable Barry Weiss has been promoted and is going to Surrey Detachment, as long as they have RCMP there. And Constable Etienne Boulay is transferred to Quebec Federal Policing. He's here for a few more months before he actually leaves. So I've been busy working with our staffing section for replacement officers, and so far we have a corporal coming from Maple Ridge, and recently announced a transfer of a member from Whistler Detachment and another one from from Seashell Detachment. And then internally there will be a promotion for a corporal's position that will be held in the next coming couple months. So it's kind of a little bit of shuffling that experience and those officers around to new locations. So we'll benefit from that. On the community policing side, there is lots of change that we've implemented this year in terms of new strategies to better reach the whole community with a real preventative perspective that we're trying to bring. As an example, the Block Watch program has been completely reestablished. There is, the focus of that is to better connect neighborhoods with policing. And we currently have 40 Block Watch groups within our policing jurisdiction. 13 of those are within Sydney, which has a total of 339 participants, residents in Sydney. And there's 621 participants in total with that program. And just by information for you, our coordinator is actively emailing the Block Watch captains. It's like an email fan-out system with crime activity notices to these neighborhoods. It's a little beyond what we've ever done in the past. Lots of alerts for frauds and scams type of information. And in return, we received information about neighborhood activity. We are active with our Saanich Peninsula Restorative Justice Program. They have asked me to thank council, mayor and council, for the funding annually that is provided to support their program. They have about 15 volunteers that are active. We make case referrals to them for an alternate resolution to different cases. And as we begin planning more for how we can increase utilization of the program, we are looking at, for one example, of shoplifting offenses and how we might incorporate the Sydney Business Association with that and representing those businesses. We also have a public spaces initiative. Designated public space locations were identified for our officers to make daily checks, foot patrols, to increase police presence in those locations. For Sydney, some of those locations, that probably won't surprise you, are like Iroquois Park, the skate park, the Bevan Pier, Lochside Trail, and even the business area of Beacon Avenue. On school liaison, we have our community policing officer, Constable DePass, who's involved and engaged in the schools, continues with some safety education for the students. Bike safety, social media safety, the DARE program are things that she has incorporated there. Back to my soapbox about property crime prevention. So over 2018, we had repeated rashes of thefts from vehicles. I know council has heard this before. So we're in the process of implementing a program called No Valuables Inside. That program will be coordinated in conjunction with partnership with a local motor vehicle branch, and we'll try and see if we can get a few businesses that might support it as well. It involves like a label that can go in vehicles, but the whole idea behind this is getting people to think more about what they're leaving their vehicle in their vehicles, and almost weekly I kind of look at thefts that we do have, and I'm going, it's all preventable. I won't go on again about that. Focus areas at present. So as we look at where we're at in policing and changes in legislation and things like that, there's three things that I was going to mention about a focus for our detachment. One is that we're training more officers in standard field sobriety testing and drug recognition for drug impairment as a result of changes that we've seen over the last year. We're looking to build cybercrime investigation capability. That's where I see crime in the future heading. It's already ahead of us, and there's different software that we need called Celebrite, and some training that is going to help us with that. So there's a focus being built around that, which will take some time to accomplish. And then with the new BC Provincial Police Standards, training in major case management is ongoing with our detective group. I thought I would touch briefly as I wrap up on the crime statistics. I know that Council received the report. Just to touch on things very quickly, calls for service in Sydney were down slightly to 3,033 for last year. Prisoners held were down slightly. Mental health calls were up considerably. Probably not a surprise there. We had, within Sydney alone, we had 108 mental health calls officers attended. On the traffic safety piece, 0 fatalities within Sydney last year. You did better than your neighbor, North Saanich, who unfortunately had 2 fatal accidents last year. Injury accidents was relatively the same as the previous year. Property damage accidents was also relatively the same as last year. Impaired driving enforcement was up quite a bit. That's probably in part because we had a full-time traffic officer last year compared to the year before. And our traffic enforcement for speeding and other violations was up to 2,349, but that's a combined number for Sydney and North Saanich. On the actual crime levels, violent crime was very similar to the year before. Property crime was also very similar to the year before, 299 reported property crimes. Looking into that a little bit though, interesting things, fraud is up 23% and vandalism was down 25%. So that's interesting changes there that we saw. Theft of bikes was up quite a bit. Theft from vehicles was pretty much the same as the year before. And disturbance calls was down 37%. So I'm not sure what to attribute the disturbance and breach call decline, but that's a summary of the policing report that encapsulates 2018. I don't know if council has any questions before I leave you to your meeting.
Thank you, Staff Sergeant. Any questions, Councillor Duncan?
Yeah, I just had a question about your public place watch and getting visible. Is Resthaven Island on that list at all about getting people to go out there and be visible? Because I know that's one of the things we hear as council is people out there saying people loitering around, people using that pergola, things like that.
Well, that's interesting. It is not on that designated list. We will, as we start our fiscal year in April 1st, we'll do a consultation with our leadership here in the community, and we'll talk about some of those things that the community would like to see. I did attend a meeting last, I know Randy was there, and Mayor, you were there, right? Monday, yes, thank you. I was there and sort of heard a lot about the Tseum Harbor issues, and so that's good feedback actually about that location. I do know about some of the issues I learned from that meeting, and I'd heard a bit about them before as well. So thank you.
Thank you.
Any other questions, Councillor O'Keefe?
I think you answered what I was going to ask, but I'll ask anyways. In regards to the increase in impaired drivers and also other infractions for speeding. So those are up significantly, but so it's not necessarily that people are speeding more or drinking or driving more. We're just catching them because we had enhanced enforcement.
The difference there Why there's such a significant difference is because in 2017, we had some vacancies, and I had to run a vacancy in our traffic section.
Okay.
And we didn't have a full-time traffic member. So this past year, we have had that, and hence you see more enforcement happening in both those areas. Yeah.
Any favorite spots for speeding infractions? Where,
I'm sorry, I can't tell any secrets here. The safest bet is to not speed anywhere.
no. I guess I should have said, what are the trouble spots?
Oh, there are many. Yeah. I heard a lot about it at North Sandwich, so you've got a competing partner there who wants all of the resources in North Sandwich. But in truth, we do our best to distribute them, and enforcement is really only one piece to the speeding piece. You know, we need the engineering part. We need those traffic calming things to really be effective as well. So we work with the town. One thing we do know that might just add is if we get complaints about a particularly problem street for speeding, we'll reach out to the town who has speed measuring equipment to talk to them about installing that and really get a picture of like just, well, how significant is this problem, rather than just sending resources there randomly. Like, we take a look at that piece, so the town is particularly helpful on that piece, so we can utilize the resources efficiently.
Good. Thank you.
Staff Sergeant Connolly, thank you very much.
Thank you. All right, have a great evening.
We've had a request from a council member to lift an item from correspondence for information, which would be item 16.4, an email from Mr. G. Thompson to new business. So if I could have a motion with regards to an amended agenda, please.
So moved.
Discussion, all those in favor? Motion carries unanimous, thank you. And move to adoption of minutes for our regular council meeting of January 14th, 2019.
So moved.
I'll second.
Any questions? Call the question. Oops. Councillor Duncan?
I'm actually wondering, can I also very briefly raise the 16.1 up to new business as well?
Let's pass this motion and then
Oh, sorry.
I'll call the question on the adoption of minutes. All those in favor? Motion carries. Can we do that when we get to item 16?
Yeah.
Okay. Item number 5, business arising from our council in-camera meeting of January 14th, 2019. We received a resignation from Mr. Clarence Bolt dated December 19th, advising of his resignation on the Board of Variance. Be received for information. What led to the resignation is Mr. Bolt was appointed to the Advisory Planning Commission, and it's in our policies that a member sitting on EPC cannot sit on the Board of Variance. So that was received. I'll now move to delegations. Item 6 on the agenda. We have two delegations this evening. The first is request for funding from the Sydney Business Improvement Area Economic Development Function. And we have a presentation by Ms. Susan Samasco, President, and Ms. Donna Petrie, Executive Director. Welcome, ladies.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor and Mr. Mayor and Council. Thank you very much for the invitation to be here. And before we move into our presentation, I would just like to say thank you to the RCMP. I don't usually get the opportunity to do this in public, but as you know, we had a number of very serious shoplifting incidents this year, and the RCMP was most helpful to our business community, so I just wanted to perhaps have that minuted because it's been so important to us, so thank you for that. At any rate, we are very delighted to be here to do this presentation, and what we'd like to do over the next little while, maybe 20 minutes, hopefully 18 minutes, is to give you an overview of the key elements of our proposal, to highlight the 4 issues that we think need addressing here in Sydney, and thirdly, we'd like to suggest why we think the BIA is well positioned to do the work that we've described to you. Our proposal, our presentation will cover this basic outline. I'll do the introduction and a bit of background for you. Donna will give you an exciting update on our pilot project, and then I'll mostly do the economic development proposal supported by Donna. So this story actually begins back in 2008, what led us to be here tonight. For those of you who remember 2008, that was the year of the terrible recession, and towns all across Canada, like Sydney, really suffered. We had business loss, we had people lost, we had mortgage payments not being paid, our streets were largely empty, and our business owners were in a desperate state to figure out how they were going to survive the recession. So about 2010, 2012, in between there, a group of inventive and creative and persistent property owners and business owners got together to look at all the different models of business associations that could make a difference to bring more people to Sydney and to help rectify what really was a declining town. They looked at many different models, and the one that they ended up coming to council with was the business improvement area model. This is a model used all over the world where commercial property owners pay a levy against the assessed property value into a fund that goes to a not-for-profit organization, which then does its work to promote, market, or whatever it's going to do. The initial mission of the BIA was to bring in more footsteps to Sydney. Council approved that recommendation, commercial property owners approved it, and the BIA was established. So this picture on the right shows what's happened over the last 5 years. I think largely because of the BIA's work, and yes, the recession was over, but really we have done a tremendous job, I think, to bring people into Sydney. And this picture on the right was taken during the sidewalk sale in July, and we just thought the contrast over 5 years is quite significant, and we wanted to point it out to you. So originally, the BIA's mandate or purpose statement was very simple. It was to bring footsteps into Sydney. But over the course of the 4 or 5 years that we had to work with that purpose statement, it became clear that we could do a much better job of actually describing what we were after. And what we were after is what's here. The purpose of the Sydney Business Improvement Area Society is to increase footsteps, potential customers, clients, and event attendees, which is a major driver of economic success, through the development, implementation, and evaluation of marketing, promotion, communication, and other collaborative initiatives. That purpose statement was approved by the membership a year and a half ago. So how have we actually gone about that? Well, most of our budget, and I've given you a copy of our annual report, by the way. I put that out there, and I'm sorry I didn't get it beforehand, but better late than never. You will see that most of our money, most of our funding has gone into promotion and marketing. And we divide up that promotion and marketing budget to local, regional, and destination market. And we've used all sorts of formats and platforms, digital, print, bus things, anything you can imagine, radio, TV. We've been in there promoting and marketing Sydney as a great source of, for shopping, for staying, for playing, for recreation. We've also spent a lot of time not just on event coordination with all our not-for-profit organizations. The Sydney BIA has also initiated a number of very successful events. For example, some of you may not know, but Christmas in Sydney is a BIA event. So the carriage tours, the carolers, the scratch and win contest, all of that is established by BIA. And how many people did we have, Donna, participate in the scratch and win this year? About 7,000. So 7,000 people actually. We know more people bought stuff, but they actually brought those things in there. Stakeholder engagement has been a very big part of our work as well, because without stakeholder engagement, and by that I mean the Victoria Airport, Bouchard Gardens, Town Hall, even North Saanich, a whole range of people outside the basic business community have become involved with the BIA in one way or another. And they've also been collaborators as we focused on one project or another. So stakeholder engagement has been a very important part of us achieving our goal of increasing the footsteps. And finally, I think that the BIA has become the central hub for the business community. If people have a complaint, we hear about it. If we do something really well, or people have had a really good profit for a weekend, we'll hear about it. And people are talking among themselves, and we are hearing about it, and we're very much involved. And in the old days, we had the Sydney Business Association and the Sydney Merchants Group. This is before we had the BAA, and they were volunteer organizations. They had no funding. They had very little expertise, however willing they were. So now we have funding. We have expertise in Donna. We have a very active board, and I believe we're doing a good job of what we've set out to do. So while we're doing our work over the last 5 years, several things became obvious, that not all was well in Sydney. Looks a lot better, but we're not there yet. So you don't have to hear it from me. You just have to walk around town to see that, or over in West Sydney, I have to tell you, or Harbour Road, that there's been a terrible problem in attracting and retaining qualified employees. If we don't have employees, our businesses suffer. They're not able to offer the same service, and a lot of business owners are very frustrated because they're working long hours because they can't get the proper staff. We also have a lack of coordinated business development services, and I say that because Donna and I regularly receive calls from external organizations thinking about coming to Sydney or some question, and they don't know whether to begin with Town Hall, the Chamber of Commerce, the BIA, a realtor. So there's absolutely, right now, there's a lack of coordinated business development, and that means that's a waste of time. But meanwhile, they go looking on the web and they find some other place, and that's where they go. The next one is the long-term economic development strategy. Now, I've been involved with the town for 18 years. Every single group I've been involved with, starting in, well, 18 years ago, whatever that was, and certainly the Community Development Commission, Community Development Committee, the Mayor's Task Force, the Economic Development Commission, and the BIA have all pointed out that Sydney does lack a long-term economic development strategy, and we believe that that needs to be rectified. Lastly, there's certainly a lack of readily available information about how to relocate or start a business in Sydney. There's simply there's no central source of that information. And what we realize is that promotion and marketing, what we do best, and event coordination or implementation is simply not sufficient. So we decided what needs to be done, and that has led us to the pilot project. Now, before I move to the next slide and close my portion of this presentation, a number of people have said, are you doing that or am I? Am I doing that? I guess some people have asked me, well, why can't property owners do this? Why does the BIA have to do this? It doesn't seem right. The reason property owners can't do it is, 1, a lot of property owners don't even live in Sydney. 2, property owners are largely entrepreneurs. They're busy making money, buying and selling businesses. 3, they do not have the expertise to look at the community as a whole. And, step further, we have invited property owners to several meetings, and they're all very supportive. Yep, they agree. And we did get a 94% success rate when the BA was renewed 2 years ago. But they're not about to pick up the strings and start doing economic development on behalf of the town of Sydney. They're simply not. They are already paying a lot in tax, and they look for leadership, I think, to the BIA for that. So anyway, we realized that there's nobody there who's going to do it, and we would like to tackle it. So what we did about the pilot project, we came up with some ideas for new strategies to address the problems, and Donna will tell you what our success is. We have decided, and the board was really adamant about this, that our focus should be on clear projects and deliverables. We weren't about to do some general thing that talked about the regeneration of Sydney. No, we wanted to have specific projects that would address specific needs that we could then be results-oriented and be successful in. So the previous council found our merit in our proposal and funded us for a 6-month pilot period. So Donna will now give you the results of that, and then I'll come back and talk about how we'd like to build on what we've achieved to move forward with the economic development project.
Thank you, Susan. Hopefully this will cooperate with me. No pushing buttons.
I'm not going to do anything. I could barely operate that. So.
Thanks, Susan, and good evening, everybody. So now is the show and tell portion of the evening. So with the with the pilot project, which was officially launched on January 7th, we focused on 4 specific areas because we wanted our project to be measurable at the end of it, so we could look at everything that we had done and evaluate it and actually have something tangible that we could look at and also share with council and the community. So we established the campaign and we came up with Startup in Sydney. And that was really fitting for a couple of reasons. One, it spoke to people that are looking to start up their career in Sydney and those that are maybe looking at starting up or relocating a business to Sydney. So we came up with this look and feel for the project. And we designed a microsite. And if you haven't had a chance to look at it yet, I definitely recommend visiting it. And we'll get into that in a little more detail. We established a business attraction campaign and a talent attraction campaign. And we looked at some universal signage and messaging around the vacancies in Sydney. And this all launched on January the 7th. So we really wanted the microsite, but also the whole campaign to be really fun and vibrant. We really wanted to attract attention as to what's going on in Sydney. We really wanted to change that conversation and change the perception of what some people feel is happening or not in Sydney. So on the microsite, which is startupinsydney.ca, and I won't go to it now, but these are the different categories that we include information on. So we have, what is Sydney's value proposition? Why is it so great to do business here? We wanted to make it clear where our location is because we are finding where there's interest from entrepreneurs that are wanting to relocate from even the lower mainland. For example, Moden, which just opened on December 1st, she moved here specifically to open a business in Sydney. It wasn't by accident. She actually chose to relocate here. So on the microsite, we wanted to make it clear where we're located on southern Vancouver Island. We wanted to include some of our success stories. We have so many. There are a few on there with pictures and quotes from local business owners, some new, some that have been here for a long time. We wanted to provide some resources for entrepreneurs, but also leasing agents. So on the microsite, there's links to videos, image gallery, but also we've created a downloadable fact sheet. And that's something that many leasing agents have asked us to create as part of this campaign because they too are lacking that resource and that one piece of information that they can easily share with potential clients. So that's been established and is available on the microsite. And contact us form, because obviously we want people to contact us, but secretly it's so we can also track the metrics. How are people finding out about us? So when you have time to look at the form, you'll see that there's a drop-down menu of different options of how they found out about the microsite and also why are they contacting us. These are some of the visual images of messages that are being carried around right now on BC Transit wraps. And all of the messages for the BC Transit wrap speak to a business attraction campaign. So they're on the side of the buses traveling throughout downtown Victoria, Oak Bay, Langford. And again, we just really wanted to get this vibrant, fun message out and using some fun wording on the ads. Oops. These are examples of some of the posters that are in our BC Transit bus shelters that you may have seen around Sydney. And a couple of them speak to business attraction and a couple of them speak to talent attraction, which we know is a very common problem, not just in downtown Sydney, but all of Greater Victoria. So again, using very fun iconography, using the Startup Sydney icon and the Startup in Sydney for the call to action. So digital advertising is really inexpensive to purchase and it's everywhere. So you'll see here, this is an example of one of the animated video clips that we created that are being shared through Google AdWords, Instagram, and Facebook. And if you're on any of those platforms and haven't seen these, you might be seeing them very soon, because all the numbers that I'm seeing that are coming in, for the advertising is really strong. Again, we wanted it to be fun, we wanted it to be interactive, and we wanted them to all be animated to get attention. This is just an example of a Douglas Magazine ad that we have coming out next month, and we felt it was really important to be in Douglas Magazine. Again, this is a magazine that has great distribution, and you find stories in there about new entrepreneurs and new startups that are happening. And from everything that I've seen in the past, Sydney just wasn't quite there, and I really wanted us to be able to tell our story and position Sydney in this magazine. So this double-page spread will be coming out in February. Part of the talent attraction piece of our work was establishing a Sydney job bank. And it's important to note that this job bank is free to use for everybody, and it's actually not just for downtown Sydney. We have businesses already listing jobs there from West Sydney and Harbour Road area. And these stats, again, these slides were made on January 23rd, but you can see the numbers are already really strong. And I'm sure by the time we have provide a final report to council that the numbers will be much higher than this already. So finally, as part of our examples of the work that we have put together here for the campaign, a lot of people have asked me, why are you wrapping the windows? Why are we spending money on this? Why aren't property owners doing this? And for me, I was really thinking about that question. And I just see our our vacant windows. There's a few opportunities there. And really, these windows are blank canvases to show and tell our story of what we have here in Sydney. It was also a great opportunity to be able to link everything that people are seeing digitally on buses. So when people come into Sydney, they can see there's a concentrated effort of of our work, and obviously it's a great way to advertise the campaign. This particular window is completed. That's the Wine by You space on 5th. We have the Loloka space that will be installed next week, and we're working with the leasing agents for the Tatum and Olivia space and the Bubbaloo space. And once everything has been finalized for the development piece of land that's on 4th and Beacon, right now it's just construction fencing. We really hope to wrap that as well. Again, we really want to change the perception of what is happening here in Sydney and really use those windows and that space to tell our story. So just wrapping up before I pass it back to Susan, the results so far, these stats were pulled at 2 weeks in, and I'm excited to share some very preliminary results. We've had 4 new business leads come in that have called me because of the microsite. And this will all be included in our final report, but we've had a restaurant, a startup that's having problems in downtown Victoria, which is a tech company. And they said, Donna, we keep seeing your ads on Instagram, and you've inspired me to finally call and find out what's going on in Sydney. We've had a small retailer contact us, and also a service sector business, which I've been able to connect with some leasing agents and property owners. So 2 weeks in, 4 businesses, those are some fairly significant results, and I really feel that it shows that there is a need there to have somebody to answer the phone to work with these businesses. We've also had I think I need to put this down. I had an interview with CBC. We did a live interview with them last week. It was in the Times Colonist and front page of the PNR, and those are all leads that came from a media release that we issued over the pilot project. The hits to the microsite are there. A lot of those clicks are coming from our digital advertising, and about 2,300 links to the job page so far. So I look forward to sharing all the results with you at the end of March once this project has been completed.
Thanks very much, Donna. And I do think that the pilot has shown us some very exciting results. Anyway, we would certainly like to build on that. So we've put forward a 2-year economic development project that focuses on some of the same things: business attraction, business retention, and expansion. We have a lot of businesses that are really teetering, members of council. Because they can't get staff, we have people who are working, 18 hours a day, and they're tired. and they're thinking, I'm just going to give up. We have a lot of people who are approaching retirement. We need to help them sell their businesses to keep going. There's a lot to be done. The talent and attraction issue, that's going to be ongoing as long as we have such high employment rates in the area. Asset and advisory group, we know from what we've already learned from the microsite is that we have to have a one-stop shop approach, whether it be the website and or voice. And some people will come in from the website, others will come in through the telephone, but we need to have a one-stop consistent service. We also feel that we need to work collaboratively. That's certainly one of the ways the BIA has been as successful as it has. And that Sydney Economic Development Advisory Group, we'd like to suggest, would include representatives from the airport, from West Sydney, the Chamber of Commerce, the downtown, the realtors, commercial property owners, that would actually serve in much the same model as we have with the Sydney Event Advisory Group, where they would provide advice and guidance and help set priorities for the BIA as we move forward with the project. This project, like many things that the BIA has done and will do, is going to be project-based, so we can have clear deliverables and we can evaluate the outcomes at every step of the way. It will involve as many people as we can possibly involve from all the segments of Sydney that I've already highlighted. I believe the BIA has shown over the years that it's fully accountable. When we say we're going to do something, we do it. We send Andrew our audited financials every single year. I don't think we've ever missed anything. And mostly, I believe the BIA has been very results-oriented, and that's why we can account for many of the numbers that you'll see in the annual report. I also believe we have the experience, the expertise, and I need to say a word about the credentials. I don't usually mention that, but in this case, I want you to know that Donna is now completing 2 economic development credentials, one that's international and the other Canadian, and she should be finished with those in the next 9 months. So we're very proud of her achievements, what she's done being a single mom, as well as holding this job, and she's still managing time to do that. So we're very fortunate. So the last slide I have is our budget request, and someone said to me, well, why can't the BIA do more? Why can't you just take it out of the levy money? And the fact is the levy money is already committed. We have to continue to do promotion and marketing and all the things the BIA does, which is why we need to seek funding, hopefully from the Economic Development Fund. And what we'll be seeking, how did I get to year one, is $50,000 for this year, because we're already using the pilot money through the end of March. The BIA will put in $10,000, and it's important for me to say that that $10,000 will not come from levy money. That $10,000 will come from associate memberships and sponsorships. So the total budget for doing the things, much like you've seen in the pilot, is $60,000. And again, it'll focus on all of the things that we've been discussing, which we believe really are critical to Sydney's evolution as a vibrant, small community with manufacturing, the boating industry, and downtown. And you'll notice that the last point there, the creation of a dedicated economic development website and all the supporting assets that go with that. We feel that's a really important step. Similarly, for year 2 is for the whole year, $75,000. Again, we'd put $10,000 in partnership, highlighting on the same things because they're not going to go away quickly, those problems. And we see the need for additional economic development marketing tools such as videos, interactive website enhancements, and updates. We also believe that the BIA will contribute significantly in-kind contribution. So I've given you the background, a little bit of how we got there, the issues that we've identified, and what we'd like to do. But there's something even more fundamental than that Donna and I were trying to figure out how could we end this presentation. And we just happened to see this, and I think this sums it up. If you are working on something exciting that you really care about, you don't have to be pushed. The vision pulls you. And as we've been working with the BIA and the business community and all the different partners over the last 5 years, we have been pulled in this direction. It's consistent with our mandate. It's what I think that the people who set the BIA up expected us to evolve into. Just like Sydney's changed, the BIA has changed, and I feel that we're ready to take the next step to help Sydney become all it can be. So with that, I'll conclude and happy to take your questions. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Susan Smasco and Donna Petrie. Any questions from council?
Yes, Barbara.
Councilor Fallon.
Oh, sorry.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much for the presentation. I've sat here and over the last 4 years and seen your various presentations, and I certainly know of your work. Just thinking right now of the store reps, that's certainly something that I struggled with, and taking another look at it and looking at the one at the Wine Kits. I happened to be buying my insurance the other day, and I stopped and looked at it, and I looked at how I saw the storefront as opposed to just looking into the empty glass and whatever was in the space. And I get it. I also get your explanation of why a property owner probably wouldn't do it. And
Certainly wouldn't do it for others.
yeah, so I get that part of it, and I get your promotion and your vision. Where I'm struggling with is something that you mentioned in your presentation, and those of us who were able to go on the tour of industry on Friday. The common theme is employers are saying they can't get or they can't keep employees because of affordable housing and transportation.
Right.
If those two elements are missing out of the equation and we continue drawing in new businesses and the existing businesses at the other end are falling off, I'm concerned that we're spending energy in attracting more and we're losing it on the other end. So what are we gaining in that? I mean, 7-Eleven closed. My understanding of that one, and I stand corrected if I'm wrong, is they had problems getting employees. I don't know what the problem was with Mother Nature. So can you help me with this as to how can you go ahead with this part of the project if an important element at the other end is missing?
I would hope, Barbara, that we could do multiple things. I think that the BIA does not have the expertise to tackle the mass transportation
And I'm
or
not
the affordable
suggesting
housing.
it's your...
But I think that there are other organizations that are looking at this. We have had many close looks at the affordable housing issue, and I believe this council and others are doing the best they can with that. A number of people, including Adam Olson, people in West Sydney, are looking at the transportation issue. A number of downtown businesses are looking at that, and they're actually offering bus passes. And what we need to do, I believe, is to show that there is an imperative need to have better public transportation here. I don't think we've made the case well enough yet. That's Susan Smasco, that's not the board speaking. I don't believe they get it yet. And I have a meeting next week with folks at the airport to talk about just that issue. How can we do it? And on Friday, with many of the West Sydney businesses, they're lacking people in the trades. They are concerned about the transportation. Some of them were very surprised to hear that organizations like the Pier Hotel are actually giving bus passes as part of the benefits package when people come here. And one guy said, "Oh, what a good idea. It's such a small investment. But how are they going to get from here to there?" So there's a lot of issues, and we have to get the buses out there. I don't have the answer, but I have to tell you, a number of us are thinking about it, as I know a number of you are thinking about it. It's key. However, if we don't continue to bring new people in, we don't continue to bring new businesses in, we'll lack the diversity we need, and we need the town to flourish, and then hopefully things will come in. A long time ago, I was managing a project in Britain, and somebody asked a similar question, very hard question. I didn't have the answer. And what I said is, I actually believe in the popcorn method of community or business development. And that is to say, different things have to pop up at different times, and they might not always be harmonized, but that's the way change comes about. And I would put for you to consider that this proposal is one piece of the pie. It's not the whole thing. But we'd be happy to work with others and put our voice in there and together work with, like Jeff Dixon and some of the others, to make that voice as loud as possible.
Okay, thank you.
Councillor Rintoul and Councillor O'Keefe.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor, and I want to thank Donna and Susan for your unwavering enthusiasm. It's after all these years from start to where you are today, your energy and enthusiasm are infectious. So, thank you for the work that you do, and I see some success already, certainly in the pilot, and I like the wraps. I agree with Councillor Fallon on the comments there, and the jobs website itself, in that it's specific to Sydney. And the number of visits that you've had already in under a month, the number of jobs that are on there.
It's only 2 weeks.
It's great. So well done. A very valuable initiative. Perhaps for my own education and some others in the room, explain to me, if you would, has your board entertained the prospect of looking to expand, if you will, the mandate of the BIA, in the sense that your levy zone is limited to the core of Sydney, when clearly these initiatives, and they should be, earmarked to benefit and look at development in areas such as the West Side and Harbour Road as well, and would that not allow for some additional revenue for the BIA that's
a
clearly
couple
needed?
of things there I'm happy to answer. One, the BIA has to look at this every 5 years. That's the whole thing, when renewed. Secondly, we were advised when we set up the BIA, and I believe the mayor is aware of this, that a business improvement area cannot market totally dissimilar areas. So, for example, could we actually promote and market light industry at the same time as we marketed a downtown district? All the experts say that can't be done. That doesn't mean we can't do other things, which is why we're choosing to do this. But we actually would encourage the establishment of a BIA in West Sydney, a separate entity that could promote and market and deal with the issues over there. And we would like to work collaboratively with whomever's there. But honestly, Chad, I think that is the honest answer. Donna, you want to add to that?
I was going to say the same thing. There's 21 or 22 BIAs in Vancouver alone, and that's for the same reason, that they were advised that you can't be everything to everybody, especially when you're marketing. It's hard to market businesses that are manufacturing widgets or carpets, and then you're trying to promote a downtown tourism sector or a strong retail sector. It's just too difficult, so they always recommend to keep like-minded business and business sectors together. So like Susan said, we'd be happy to help businesses over on the West Side form a BIA, and the reason we're asking for the funding for the pilot project is because we know that we can do some great work, but not within the existing levy for this particular project.
And to clarify then, you have a category of membership, an associate or affiliate membership. Do you accept memberships then from Harbour Road area or West Side? And if so, that's a portion of your revenue.
Yeah, that's why the airport is an associate member. Yeah. Bouchard Gardens, that new B place has become an associate member. The Deep Cove Market. We have a lot of non-Sydney businesses. But the thing that we do, we have to make sure they're not in competition with a Sydney business.
But mainly for me, also what I look at when somebody applies to be an associate member is, can we offer value to them? We don't just accept memberships from everybody for the sake of accepting those dollars. If I don't feel confidently that I can provide them with value, then we'll always be helpful and in advisory capacity. But if somebody is focused on foreign direct investing, can the BIA help them? I just want to make sure that we can always offer value. So, yeah.
Councillor O'Keefe?
Thank you. A few questions. First, I'll start with, I was happy to hear you say that it's important to have measurable outcomes. And so what I was looking for in the pilot and in the proposal, and it wasn't clear to me, so maybe you can help me clarify for me, is what are the outcomes or what are the metrics? What are the benchmarks that have been established that we're going to build on? So it's great to hear that there was so many clicks on a website, that 4 new businesses came in, but those are just things, right? They're just anecdotal information. So what I was looking for is, what's our starting point and what are the metrics that we're using? For example, I'm sure over maybe the town staff have information about what's the regular turnover of businesses in Sydney in January. You know, what's the normal in and outflow? So those sorts of things. so that when the pilot is finished, it's nice to say that, you know, oh, there was 5 new businesses that came in here, which is a good thing. But how do we know that it was as a result of the pilot? So I'm looking for those sorts of measurable things. Same thing with employee recruitment and retention. So there's always a lot of people come in and go in all the time. So what are the benchmarks that you're looking at, and what are the outcomes and the indicators you're going to measure?
You want to go?
Sure. There certainly is a lack of benchmark data in Sydney, and so it will be difficult to provide that level of information, especially within just a 6-month project. And we can certainly get some data from town staff on business license numbers that are opened month over month or closures. We can certainly include that in our project. But like you say, there isn't a lot of baseline data to go from in terms of revenues for retailers and things like that. But we certainly can look at we'll be providing all the stats that we can, and I would actually like to see if this project, if council sees that there's merit in us continuing, we can use the data that we have to start with to start forming baseline data and go from there. I mean, the stats that we will get from our website, we can compare to our normal stats that we would have in terms of traffic to our website and what sort of lift that looks like, because we do have 5 years of data for that. But in terms of those details that you're looking for, there just isn't a lot of benchmark or baseline data to use that I know of.
So I guess
So,
what
if you wanna add to
what
that.
I'll need to be able to explain to taxpayers if we're going to fund this is, what am I going to be able to say to them at the end of this pilot project? We know that this was a good investment in our money because why?
Well, let's hope that we get a number of employees, for example.
Well,
I mean, it's better to have, and if we fill 4 vacancies, if we do,
yeah.
I think that's something that we can point to as a success. And similarly, in trying to have the job bank and at least have a way that people can advertise and let people know. And maybe we can do a survey to say how many of you filled vacancies and through the job bank. There's going to be some basic questions we can ask, Terry. We're not there yet. And,
Yeah.
and I want to say in the 2-year project, we haven't yet formulated the exact projects that would be in place. And what we would hope is if we're working with Harbour Road, we're working with West Sydney downtown, the projects that we set, we would actually say, this is how we know we're going to be doing a good job. I don't think we know yet. It's like the echo counters. You know what? The BIA, before we had the echo counters, we thought we were doing a good job because there were more people. But now we have the echo counters, and we can actually say, when we have these events at the Mary Wynns Bureau or at the Shaw Center for the Sailor Sea, we know it's bringing in more people because we can see that.
Yeah.
So we're just at the early stages of that, and we will have it. I have absolute confidence we will. We don't have it yet.
I think moving forward, or you've mentioned some ideas of things you might use, because what I'm accustomed to is when you start a pilot, we're working on a pilot because there's been an issue or there's some information that says we're deficient in some area. And so you go to improve on that. But unless you have a data set or a benchmark to say that we've moved from that, it's hard for me to justify to
we know that a lot of
taxpayers.
businesses are about to go under because they don't have staffing, so I don't know how much more you need.
Yeah. Anyways, so a couple other questions I had was, so in regards to the lack of information for businesses, so I looked on the town's website, and there's a lot of information there for businesses. There's information about community profile, demographics, business statistics, labor market information, available commercial space. There's a link to a one-stop business registry. There's links to organizations like the BIA, the Chamber, and other things. And so what I'm trying to figure out is a lot of those are things that you mentioned on your website. So I'm trying to understand why this other website is required.
Well, for one thing, that may be in existence, but we're still getting an awful lot of phone calls from people that are not finding it helpful or don't have it in one particular place.
The
So,
problem is right
okay.
now, from what I'm hearing, because I get all the phone calls,
Yeah.
because town staff send them my way, which I appreciate, there isn't somebody right now that's doing this work. I get the call because I'm helpful and I'm available, but there isn't that one stop point of contact, that warm body that has information, that isn't a leasing agent, that can provide neutral support and advice, because they come to my office. Hi, can I just come and see you? I'm thinking about opening a business in Sydney. That's not currently our mandate. I'm not there to help people that are opening a business, but there's nobody else, so we don't turn them away. That's really what is lacking, is that warm body that can be helpful and encouraging. And that's why we're here tonight, because we feel that is missing and somebody needs to do it, and we're willing to help with that and, you know, help those entrepreneurs that are excited about Sydney. But currently there isn't one warm body to call for all the information, and that's why we're suggesting it be us.
I'm just wondering if there might be potential to, use what we have already with the town with some tweaking and add, if we think a warm body is required rather than maintaining two different websites, just something to ponder.
Yeah.
Another question I've been asked is about the job bank and how there's a lot of job search engines out there anyways, and so I guess the question that's been asked to me is, how is having a separate job site for Sydney going to be significantly better, and how would we measure that than all these other things are out there? I know my kids and young people I know, they go to Indeed and Monster Jobs.
Yes.
They don't know about Sydney. They'll go to these other places, so just sort of what the value added there.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
One piece of feedback that we had immediately from a member who is a significant contributor to the levy is, oh, thank goodness this is a site I don't have to pay to use. And in sites like Indeed, from an employer's perspective, they're charged $500 and up per month to use those websites. We created that portion of our website for $500 for the whole development and implementation of that. And we really feel the value in having a one-stop Sydney-based job bank. That market is fiercely competitive. Everyone's hiring, and there's shiny objects from Victoria everywhere around. There's so many options. And we just feel really strongly that by having a Sydney-centric job bank, we can use that and position that specific page on our site when we have these digital campaigns on the website. It's just nice to have that all focused on the Sydney site and at no charge to the employer.
And in addition to that, Terry, we are now forming relationships, sending information to every high school from here to Victoria, the colleges, the universities, and the trade schools. They will be receiving information, posters, contacts, etc. Because in a way I agree with you, it's fine to have the job bank, but if we're not getting the applicants and not reaching the young people and the folks that we want to, especially when we were on the tour of industry and hear about the lack of tradespeople, I think we can help tremendously with that, at least to try to identify the opportunities that exist here in Sydney and why Sydney is a great place to live and work. And play.
One more. Unless the other.
No, it's,
Okay.
go ahead.
Sorry. I guess, so you're proposing a new establishment of Sydney Economic Development Advisory Group, bringing different groups together, which sounds very much like the current Economic Development Commission. So are you proposing that the EDC would dissolve then? And
I think the EDC, as I understand it, is an advisory group that serves at the bequest of council. This would be like the Sydney Event Advisory Group. It might be a more active group in helping us set the priorities and actually carry out the work. It would not just be an advisory group. And whether the town decides to keep or not keep the EDC, that's not for me to determine.
okay. Good, thanks.
Councillor Wainwright.
Thank you. During your presentation, I thought I heard you say that you were requesting this funding from the Economic Development Fund. And if I'm understanding that correctly, you're not you're asking us to reallocate existing funds. You're not expecting that we're going to increase the town's budget to fund this project?
I guess, Peter, that was our understanding, that there was money already allocated in the Economic Development Fund. If I've made a mistake about that, I apologize, but I thought there was annual money put aside in the Economic Development allocation. But if I've made a mistake with that, maybe that's the past years.
That's an interesting, the draft budget was presented, and it's actually identifying this as a supplemental, a new item, so that it would result in a tax increase. It's not looking at reallocating the way the draft is laid out. So I was wanting to get, clarification of what you're looking for us to do, because it's certainly a lot more palatable to consider redirecting existing funding than to levy an additional 0.5% tax increase. And I'm sure staff will have some comments. I'm not looking for a definitive answer. I was simply looking for your
Well, that was my understanding,
intention.
so I apologize if I'm off
Okay.
base on that.
So my second question is going to be more challenging. The draft budget presentation is starting out with a 5.95% tax increase, which I don't think anybody's terribly excited about. We have another presentation coming up right next from the Shaw Centre for the Salish Sea, and the BIA has written a letter of support, and you've indicated that the BIA views the Shaw Centre for the Salish Sea as critical, playing a vital role in attracting people to Sydney. You mentioned that it's of major importance to the whole of southern Vancouver Island, etc. And they're asking for a substantial amount of money, and I'm sure they're going to give us a good explanation for it. But if in the throes of working out our budget, we find there isn't enough money to go around, and we have to pick between your two requests, are you implying that their request is more important than this, or not?
I think, Peter, it's about council setting priorities. It's an impossible question for me to answer. We as a board, and the board was emphatic in supporting the Shaw Centre for the Salish Sea, were also emphatic about the importance of doing this work. I wish that I could say, yeah, one is more important than the other. And I know you have a number of other competing interests, and you're going to have to winnow it down. If the BIA is not funded to do this work, you know what? We will carry on doing what we have been doing quite happily. We came to this work because we saw that there was a need. And if that need is not something that's agreed to by council, or there are other greater needs, well, then so be it.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Through to staff, Mr. Hissick, did you wish to comment?
It's not quite as black and white as that. If you'll recall at the budget presentation, I provided one slide that showed where the Economic Development Fund might sit if everything was approved, and it showed something around a $23,000 increment over the established $100,000. So that information will be reinforced in a staff report for next week, and I'll cover it again. But it's not necessarily within the established $100,000 for the ED fund, but not necessarily outside of it either. Depends on what's approved.
Thank you. Councillor Garnett.
Hi, thank you for your presentation. Just more specifically, as a delivery agent for Canada Post, I've worked in this community for over a decade, and I'm wondering specifically in your approach, how you this is a tough question, but how you're gonna combat e-commerce, because it hasn't just been a growth industry, it's been an explosion industry. And I can tell you from what I see on a daily basis that a vast majority of the seniors are using it, and they're the big portion of our community. So how do you go about attracting people to come and shop downtown in retail outlets when they're just a click away from doing it at home, and that's the way they like it?
You know, Scott, that's a fantastic question, and I really would like to answer that at great length. I don't know whether this is the right format for that, but we have, in fact, been talking about it. There are communities all over the world that are grappling with exactly the same issue, And what we're trying to do in our downtown area, and I would suggest even in other areas in Sydney, we are trying to help merchants in particular to create experiences which attract people. The e-commerce challenge has been there for the last 10 years, and it's growing, you're quite right. So we have to support, and this is the retention issue, we have to support our businesses to embrace a somewhat different concept, while some of them are actually getting in the e-commerce business. So it's a combination of factors, but we have to do whatever we can to help them to survive. And really focusing on the experience of shopping one-on-one, whether I'm going to Tanner's or Lullaberry, I get to deal with the owner. And that's exciting. But it's a much longer answer, which I'd be happy to discuss with you.
Thanks.
Can I just add one thing to that? Every year, the BIA offers a series of brown bag sessions for members, and we try to have them monthly, but we usually have about 9 a year. And a couple of them this year are actually focused on, for example, selling through Instagram and helping our businesses learn what these tools that are available to them, just so they can embrace that further. Many of them are not even on social media, so that's part of it as well. But selling on Instagram, some of our businesses are already quite active in the e-commerce platform. For example, even Farmer's Daughter, they have subscription models for their business, which is fantastic to see that. And businesses like Cameron Rose, they are quite active with their e-commerce platform. But part of our training for members this year does include e-commerce and how to get more involved in that.
Thank you.
I have 3 questions. The first is with regards to the pilot project. My understanding, just for clarification, is that it's 6 months in duration. And was that October, November, December, January, February, March?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, for the 45,000.
And the reason for that, Mr. Mayor, is because when we finally got the approval to go ahead with the project, we issued an RFP, a request for proposal, to find a company that could provide us with the support we asked for in the time length and also within a very modest budget. So that took us a bit of time, and that got sorted out in early December, and they were ready to go, as Donna says, January 7th.
Thank you. Second question is with regards to the proposed Sydney Economic Development Advisory Group. And Councillor O'Keefe did ask a question, and it builds on it in a way. And that is, you've been very specific in your in identifying the projects that you want to move forward. What we don't see in the proposal is the $60,000 this year, $75,000 next year allocated to the 4 different initiatives. And I can appreciate that there's some crossover. That would be helpful, but you seem to have delineated the projects that you will be embarking on. So I'm wondering of the purpose of the CDAG committee, given that it would be representatives from, different economic organizations or representatives.
Well, it's a good question, and the answer to that question is much like when we started the Sydney Event Advisory Group. We had the Mary Winspear, the Community Arts, the Shaw Center. These organizations were vying for the same dollars, the same people, the same dates on the calendar, and until we all came together and really focused on taking one issue at a time, they were not partners. Now they're not only partners, they're collaborators. So it seems to me that we have to start with a group of people who have common interests and then identify those projects that affect all areas and work towards those with the group as both advisory as well as action. And the CIAG group, every single member is not just an advisor, but they're also collaborators, and they're also idea initiators, I don't know how to say it, and they certainly help us set priorities for the year.
Okay, so again, it's on those specifics that you've just mentioned, idea initiators and that sort of thing. If your project is delineated in terms of what you're doing, the purpose of an advisory group to come in and suggest new projects?
Let me give you an example. So, for example, in the business attraction campaign, all right? Business attraction can go in any number of ways. And I'll tell you, this morning at 7:30 in the morning, when I was standing in front of Peninsula Medical Services, I thought one of our business attraction threads should be working with council and whomever else to attract medical services or nurse practitioner practice. I think that some of the areas that we've delineated, we've suggested, I would hope that with the advisory group, we could hone that down to meet the needs of the community as we go forward in the next 2 years. And I know this council and others have already dealt with the medical issue, but it seemed to me, talking about business attraction, that there's an area where the BIA could be of help.
Thank you. Over the mandate of the first mandate and first 5-year mandate and now into the second 5-year BIA mandate bylaw, the BIA had one paid staff resource in terms of an economic, the executive director. And then that position was expanded early on with a grant from the town for event liaison, and that led to the creation of SEAG. But the executive director's time got split between, and understandably so, it was agreed to in the memorandum of understanding with the town, but the role was split. Later on in the mandate, the town or the BIA was awarded through RFP the Visitor Information Center, and additional staff person was brought on to do that. However, the executive director is still overseeing that function as well in terms of the Visitor Info Center that we have there. You have 60, the sums that you've requested for this year and next year. Do you have additional staff resource to actually implement these projects?
What we are looking to do is, well, I guess there's about 3 parts to the answer. One, we actually have an administrative assistant who is working with us. Actually, she's in Vietnam right now. But we have an administrative assistant who is working part-time to do many of the administrative functions for both Donna and Morgan in satisfying both of their positions. There's a lot, like everything from depositing checks to running around with posters. These are things that Donna did until recently. We now have somebody to do those sorts of jobs. So that has freed up a considerable amount of time. Morgan is increasingly doing the SEAG behind the scenes responsibilities. And why is she doing that? Because she has managed the Visitor Information Center to such an extent that the volunteers are picking up a lot of the slack, and the center is basically, I don't want to say it's managing itself, but it's running like a well-oiled machine. And that has given her more time as well to be of assistance. Donna, do you want to answer that question?
Yeah, and also obviously we use help with agencies in terms of design and a lot of that work. We're not designing that ourselves. We come up with a lot of the concepts. So we do use contractors as well. We're not actually doing all of the work ourselves. So. Okay.
And in addition to the funding that you've described this year, again, 50,000 from the town, 10 from the BIA for a budget, you've indicated in-kind contribution of $15,000 professional services. Can you tell us the nature of that in-kind?
Well, that would include some of my time, as I've had my business as a consultant for the last, since 1980. And this is one of the first times, Mr. Mayor, that we have actually decided to put a dollar value against the time that I have given the town freely, the BIA, the town, all these other committees, and we have put a dollar value on that.
What does that equate to a number of hours a week, for example?
I knew you were going to ask me that question. It probably accounts for about 30 hours a week.
Okay. Looking to the future, if the challenge for the organization, if your successor came aboard and either didn't have the particular expertise that you have or have the ability to contribute that in kind, how would the organization continue to move forward?
I guess that's a very good question, and I don't have the answer for that.
Okay, thank you. Thank you very much for the presentation tonight, ladies.
Quite welcome. Thank you. Thank you for your questions.
And for the very patient audience members this evening, we are receiving 2 presentations this evening. We're receiving 3 more presentations from community organizations 2 weeks from now. And these all help inform council for the budget requests that these organizations are making in the overall budget challenges that we have, as Council Wainwright alluded to. I'd now like to move to the second of the presentations this evening, and I understand it will be a bit shorter. It's a request for funding from the Shaw Center for the Salish Sea, and we have a presentation from Center Chair, Board Chair Graham Debling, and Executive Director Pauline Finn, welcome.
Well, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Good evening. Good evening, members of council. Thank you for this opportunity to speak to our submission. I'll offer some observations regarding the Centre's contribution to the community, and Pauline will follow with a brief review of how we plan to further enhance those contributions. In November 2017, some 14 months ago, the Society alerted Council to the fact that for most of its life, the Centre had been unable to balance the books. Revenue did not meet operational costs, and over the years, the reserves had been significantly depleted, and the Centre would have to close if it could not secure additional financial support from the town. In response, the town asked us to provide a range of additional information, basically listed here. And the full submission package sent to the town in December and forming part of the information pack for this evening includes the detailed materials prepared in response to the specific requests by the town in November 2017. The work to produce the required information energized and inspired our board and staff about the future. Thank God, otherwise we'd never have got it done by now. The amount of work involved in producing this response was quite substantial. In order to respond to the town's request and to better prepare ourselves to move forward, we've also made improvements to the business management systems in the Centre, analysed our financial structure, and assembled a professional staff team. As we move towards the 10th year of operation, while historically unable to balance the books, I'd suggest the Centre should be viewed as a significant success on all counts. 15 years ago, a replacement for the town-owned and operated Marine Mammal Museum was a key part of the then Council's plan for the beautification and revitalisation of the downtown area. Yes, revitalisation was still on the agenda 15 years ago. As observed by the then Chief Administrative Officer, the Council recognised that for the benefit of residents and the general economic health of the town, more visitors needed to be attracted to sustain and grow businesses on and around Beacon Avenue. Beautification would provide a pleasant environment, but the town needed something to bring the visitors in. The replacement for the old Marine Mammal Museum had a major part to play in enhancing Sydney as a destination. Well, we believe we have fully met this expectation. The Centre attracts well over 5 times the number of visitors that the combined Marine Mammal Museum and Historical Museum used to attract. We have also attracted considerable support from the local community. Membership was only introduced in 2016, actually late summer 2016, and already our membership equates to more than 1/3 of Sydney's population. And, of course, without our committed and enthusiastic volunteers, the Centre just couldn't operate at all. We also play a very important part for young people, and we're particularly proud of the fact that over 10,000 young people have attended educational programs at the Centre delivered by our staff since we opened. We also provide an excellent experiential learning opportunity for young people contemplating a career in environmental and other scientific disciplines. It's not unusual that we have young volunteers who come in middle school, continue through high school, go on to do their degrees and then their masters at UVic, and then progress with their science careers. We're also an important resource for local schools. Recently we advertised an opportunity for teachers to bring in their classes for a staff-facilitated learning opportunity. We had over 150 applications. That's applications from over 150 teachers to participate in these learning opportunities. And I would also add that our expanded focus on the Salish Sea bioregion, rather than just ocean discovery, has enabled us to broaden our offerings, widen our exhibits, which are relevant to both the revised school curriculum that was introduced recently and for reconciliation activities. We provide a wide range of other valued services for citizens of all ages, young and old, and local organizations and businesses. And these are just some of the examples. Really very popular way of engaging preschool children. Tots Tuesdays is a good example. Grandparents are already starting to pester us to know when the summer camps are going to be so they can arrange for their grandchildren to come from Ottawa and Saskatchewan and Halifax, because they like the kids, but they like the kids to have something to do while they're here. Environmental organizations use the facility as a shop window when they don't actually have space to promote their research and their activities. And increasingly, event planners are using the Centre for third-party events. In fact, our use is up 60% over the past 3 years. As to our economic impact, our 70,000 plus visitors inject millions of dollars into the local economy, and if the centre closed, much of this would go elsewhere. If the grandparents can't bring their kids in to Tots Tuesdays at the centre, they'll go to Butterfly Gardens or Bouchard Gardens or the RBCM, somewhere else to keep the kids entertained, and of course have lunch there and their coffee there and spend their money in that other community. And while we failed to achieve financial self-sufficiency, which was the original goal, I think we're actually doing better with operational revenue than most cultural centres. The 2017 Government of Canada Heritage Institutions Survey of 2,000 organisations suggests that the average earned income is 35% of operating costs. The remaining 65% comes from government sources, municipal, provincial or federal. The centre's doing much, much better than this. Currently, 90% of our operational cost is covered by earned revenue. A contribution from the town of $205,000, while significantly more than the current level, would still be significantly less than the national average. Indeed, under a third of that average. Visitor spending in the centre would still cover 75% of operational costs for a cultural facility that, in fact, is far more expensive to operate than the typical art or historical museum that characterised the majority of the centres covered by the federal government survey. As to return on investment, it's estimated that visits to the centre generate between 7 and 10 million in the local economy each year. At that level of support sought, ultimately just over 200,000, this equates to a return on investment of between 6 and 8 million in the local economy. As we lay out in our submission, without a significant increase in the level of support provided by the town, the centre is unlikely to survive more than 24 months and perhaps less. Reserves are nearly run out. But this submission is not just about financial survival. We believe with the level of support sought, we can make the centre even more valued by the local community, and in particular, more successful in attracting visitors to the town. And to say more about that, I'd like to pass the stand over to our recently appointed Executive Director, Pauline Finn. Pauline.
Thank you, Graham. And to begin, I'd like to thank Graham and our Society's volunteer board of directors who've been diligently working towards stabilizing this important community resource. We've assembled a strong, committed team, and I'm pretty thrilled to be a part of this organization and this community. As well, I would like to echo Graham's thanks to Mayor and Council for this opportunity to speak to our submission. Looking towards a more vibrant future where our center is even more valued by our community, plans and activities for building that future have already begun and are immediately very practically focused on stabilization work. Using the research and planning work elaborated in our submission, which I appreciate was substantial, was a lot of work. Critical capital work is required to update and fix failing life support infrastructure. It is underway and will be our focus for the upcoming months. Development of a preventative maintenance approach to our engineering systems care is also underway. The associated capital replacement plan included in our submission will continue to be reviewed regularly and will include ongoing inspection work. We do not wish to be in this precarious position again. Ongoing updates and integration of our business management systems and reporting also continues, and adjustments to compensation for staff aligned with the mandated minimum wage increases are critical to retaining and attracting quality staff. This stabilization of team and plant will make it possible to effectively execute on larger scale improvements and establish a culture of long-term planning. This mindset shift towards reinvestment and long-term planning is necessary to keep the organization and visitor experiences vibrant and changing into the future. Stabilization will be followed by an ongoing commitment to capital and visitor experience investment. This work will include utilizing our 10-year anniversary as a platform to kick off a next 10-year strategic planning process. That work will both ensure future investment plans are informed by the needs and wants of our residents, and will further build community awareness and support of our mission and organization. Commitment to ongoing investment in visitor experience will include changes to exhibits, programs, and communications. This exciting work will be conducted on a 2-year cycle of planning and implementation of improvements. Regular updates to experience is needed to ensure our story remains current to locals and visitors and will bring visitors back more often. The creative process underpinning this work will include community engagement activities that build excitement around those changes. The additional funds requested from the town are critical, not only in stabilizing our organization, but to make this vibrant future a reality. This investment will make it possible for the center to continue to be a Sydney first, vibrant, and valued community resource, a point of pride for residents, contributing to the social, economic, and ecological success of our town, and a draw for tourists and families from neighboring municipalities, bringing people into our downtown area and extending the stay of visitors. Without additional funding, sadly, all of this will be lost. Thank you for the opportunity to speak to our submission, and we're happy to answer any questions arising from our presentation or the submission itself.
Thank you both for the presentation. Questions from the council members? Councillor Duncan.
Thank you. This is very near and dear to my heart because I have young children and I was an oceaneer before I had those children, so. But looking at it and seeing how important, you know, that the mission is to be a center for the Salish Sea, and we have families. I know it's very important to other families on the peninsula, not just Sydney. People, this is where you take your kids in the wintertime when you can't take them to the park. Lots of people come here sometimes every day. Like they just bring their kids to the aquarium, and I can't help but wonder why it's only Sydney as the municipality that is funding it. This is the only government level of funding that you have. Do we not have like the CRD, the province? Like there, it feels like there should be others, and I'm wondering who else you've approached and what kind of response you've got from them.
Yes, if I could respond to that. Mm-hmm. The situation in the aquarium was noted before I ever joined the board. Like many not-for-profit organizations, the maximum period for any councillor, any member of the board is 6 years. So we have one member who's in her 6th year, and there's 2 or 3 of us in the 5th year. So I can't say much about what happened in the early years, but by the time I got involved, we were down to a skeleton staff, struggling to keep the place open. So I feel that there is more that could be done, but what we're spending on staffing really doesn't allow us to do many of the things that might be done. So it's possible that we could approach North Saanich, Central Saanich, Victoria, and indeed part of the thinking behind widening the remit to be the Salish Sea bioregion was that it would enable us to go to CRD, because the CRD will only fund things that relate to the land. And under the Ocean Discovery Centre, they'd already told us, I gather, that their remit didn't cover the ocean. So there was also, that was one of the considerations. There were several considerations for changing that. So I think you're right, there are the possibilities, but what we need is to be staffed adequately in order to pursue them.
Okay, thank you. And so leading on to that, we, a number of the council here, we went on a tour of industry on Friday and found that there are a lot of businesses on the west side that specialize, or at least there's one anyway, that specializes specifically in sensors for the marine environment. And one of the things you mentioned was kind of being a showcase for environmental organizations. And I'm kind of feeling like there might be a synergy here between some of our west side businesses getting the word out about their services and your mission to try and bring some education about what's happening in the sea, and perhaps maybe some money in from advertising revenue, you know, setting up a tank where you show the kind of underwater exploration and, you know, the sensors and things like that. And I just kind of keep looking at it and thinking it should not just be all Sydney. There are so many other revenue sources here, and I understand what you're saying is you feel like you need staff in order to be able to set those things up. So I'm hoping this gets people's ideas that flowing, that perhaps maybe it will not be all up to Sydney in the long term. The other thing was, the last thing, I promise, relating to the families that come in. One of the things that people have asked me, and they come up to me, is they say, you know, the one thing, and I'd say, well, what do you really want from Sydney? People in my age group, and they say, well, feels like everything's for the tourists, and you know, like, we really wish we had a spot in the town that was, you know, it was for us and for bringing our kids. And I realized, I was like, there's nothing the town can do to fund kind of an area for families to gather. People feel very isolated, right, when they don't have the parks to hang out in. And I realized this is it. And in that kind of back corner that's very underutilized now, and there's kind of some puzzles and the kind of like reading nook and the TV. And I thought, I wonder if there's also an opportunity here, because I knew that there were a number of entrepreneurs who wanted to try and rent a space in Sydney and set up something like the Kinder Gym or whatever, where it was just a spot where people could pay their $2 or their $5 and be able to bring their kids and drink their coffee and hang out in the winter when they couldn't take their kids to the park. And we already have this on Tot Tuesday, but I'm wondering if that kind of could be expanded, that perhaps here's another income opportunity and it provides a little bit more of that kind of community gathering space. And it provides something that I know families have asked for in the town. So,
could we both just respond to that? Because I think Pauline would like to pick up on some of those points. But I would say that it depends on whether you read a particular appendices. In 2 years, we raised $400,000 by donations, but people would only give for specific projects. So we could go to Mark Dickinson. He's very happy to repair a projector or give us the money to replace the thing, but not for operational costs. So that's the constant problem. How do we meet the basic operational costs and create the capacity to pursue many of these other opportunities? I didn't, Pauline, did you want to pick up?
For sure, and I did just want to add, certainly the work to get to today has been very helpful in terms of us understanding the potential and possibilities, and these are all great ideas to add to the mix. The 10-year budget that we put together does include, outside of the town as well, includes, you know, roughly $130,000 per year that we would be raising from other sources in this model. So we're not just coming to the town, but to be able to take on those additional projects that often are attached to some of the funding, you need to be stable.
Any other question? Councillor Rintoul.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and thank you for the presentation. Certainly the package was well laid out and lots of information for us here, and I thank you for that. One item that we also received was just around your year-end May 31st, 2018 financial statement. And if you could speak to two items. First off, one is your year-end showed net revenue, net income after expenses of $14,500. May 31st, 2018. So it appears as if you made money from that line, but also accounts receivable of $95,000 at year end, May 31st. So if you can just clarify those two items, please.
Yes. First of all, this was an 8-month year because a few years back we decided to change our financial year. So this was the interim period where we changed it. So those figures just relate to an 8-month period. During that period, we were very short of staff. Our staff budget ran at $40,000 under. At one point, we had a temporary deputy executive director fulfilling the roles of executive director, temporary deputy executive director, and volunteer coordinator. It's amazing she's still alive. And this was prior to Pauline's appointment, of course. So that accounted for 40,000. And we decided, because we were changing the year, that the grant we have from the town is 65,000. That would normally have been taken right across the whole year on a monthly basis. We brought it all forward into the last year because it was paid to us in that financial year. So again, there's something in the order of $20,000 that was extra in that 8-month year than would normally appear there. We reckon that the actual deficit without these things would have been nearer 50,000.
Okay. Thank you, Graham. If I may, just a couple other items. I do want to acknowledge, because I don't know that it was noted in the presentation, that the town provides the space rent-free to the Shaw Centre, and I think that's great. I think the town has a role in contributing and helping make the centre a success. So I hope we can overcome some of this. One other piece, if I may, and forgive me, because I know it's sensitive, but there's a reference in the report since 2014 to, I'm not sure if it read staff reduction of 6% since 2014, or if wages had been reduced by 6%.
Well, there have been a number of significant actions, some predating me. So when the original executive director was left us, the new executive director was paid less than 50% as an attempt to try and address the shortfall of money. The next executive director came in with a background in Aquaria from Monterey, and she took substantial steps to cut back expenditure on marketing, marketing in particular, and as staff left, tended to replace them at minimum wage or move to part-time staff rather than full-time staffing. So I think that figure comes back from looking at the records. I'm afraid I can't be much more precise than that.
So you think at your current, you've got 7 FTE and about 7 part-time positions. Is that where you need to be?
I think so, yes.
Okay, and
if we can keep them engaged and do some great work, I think this is the right.
And do you have room for grant writing within that capacity?
A little bit, yep.
Okay.
Yep.
Thank you.
Any other questions? I have a couple of. Councillor Fallon?
Thank you. When I look through the history of the Shaw Centre, it was, if I remember correctly, there wasn't a business plan to start off a good business plan for when the Shaw Centre started. And reading through the report that a lot of your monies were used to pay for staffing instead of
infrastructure,
the operations, and it's hard to run a business like that. It's hard to run an operation like that, and there is maintenance that hasn't been done, and now it's up to us to decide, with the information you're giving us, of how we make a good decision, a good business decision and a good decision for our community. And that's not always a business decision. We're having to look at some infrastructure that needs some serious work, and you need to have ample staff to do the job. And as we heard earlier, there are ideas out there that are worth exploring, but if you don't have the staff, you're stymied. So I'm really not looking for a response from you. I'm just telling you that I empathize with where you are today, and that you've done great efforts to put together a report. And it's not an easy decision, but thank you.
Councillor O'Keefe.
That was amazing amount of information that you forwarded to us. Thank you for that. A couple questions for me. You talked about visitor enhancements, not doing anything with visitor enhancements until year 3. So when you talk about visitor enhancements, what does that mean? Does that relate to programming, or does it amenities, or what does that refer to?
So we purposefully selected that term because it could be any of those things. It could be something as simple as more benches, or it could be an entire new exhibit area. And it's not to say that we're not constantly trying to improve, but we're doing it on a really small little scale. When we have the time and effort, and we recently just closed for a week to do some deep maintenance, and a lot of that is behind the scenes work, but some of it you will see. You will walk in and there is some refreshment, which is great. So it's quite varied. It could be an exhibit, could be programmatic renewal. It could also be a communications, an injection of a new communications plan.
Is that on?
Seem to have a malfunction.
You can hear me?
Yes.
Yeah, I was cut off.
Yep.
Can I elaborate on that a little bit,
Oh,
Councillor?
sure, yeah.
One of the reasons why within this plan we cycled the larger ideas for visitor enhancement on a biannual cycle, partially because of my past experience in an organization where we did it annually, and with a small team it really, really burns them out. So I think the wise approach is to listen to your community, make some plans, and stagger those major improvements every other year. So that's what we baked into that 10-year plan.
I guess I was thinking about, in terms of programming, so important to, as you know, to have new sorts of things to attract our local population in the downtimes. So I presume that will still continue to happen, not necessarily waiting all until year 3 to do those sorts of program issues.
No, absolutely.
Yeah.
It's the major projects that would be biannual.
I really liked in your presentation, I see doing different sorts of seminars and lectures to target older populations, our local senior population. So I think that's really good. I also noticed that in terms of First Nations, that you've got some art there, and I'm wondering whether there's additional opportunities there to pull in more of their story. The artwork is nice to have, but I was reflecting on things we heard at Sydney Summit. Adam Olson's uncle, I was very impressed with when he talked about the connection that First Nations have to the ocean and the land and the streams, and also building sort of on what Councillor Duncan was talking about, that environmental sort of aspect, and how we might elaborate on that a bit more in our programming.
For sure. And I'll just add that it's only been, I think, 2 years since we expanded our remit beyond just the ocean, and to embrace not just the bioregion in terms of plants and animals, but also culture. So we have a long way to go to really fully embrace that cultural piece. And I don't have all the answers right now, but I certainly have had some experience at a prior institution where, learning to do that slowly, do it with the community, not for the community or at the community. So that's a next important step for us. And we do have connections, and we do have good relations, but that needs to be refreshed and sort of pointed in a clearer direction, so that it's more regular and sustained. It's not just an event here or there. It's part of the experience every time you come in, beyond the art.
I should add that we are a popular destination for the Indigenous School of Brentwood. So this morning there was a whole group of young people from the school in the aquarium. along with another group that had actually planned it and told us they were coming, along with a preschool group that hadn't told us they were coming either. Quite interesting.
I wish you could have all been there this morning. It would have been very clear.
If no other questions, I do have a number of questions. And I'm wondering if you have available as a slide, not that everybody will be able to see it, but we could at least refer to it, and that is the 10-year financial forecast.
Do we have that as a slide?
Do you have that as a slide? Or do you have it before you?
I do have it in front of me,
We have it here,
yes,
we have this as a
but I don't have it as a slide.
I don't want to start on a negative. I just want to ask a question that I know the board has had to consider a few years ago, given the precarious financial situation, and has suggested that if funding cannot be secured, as you're requesting, that this path is the road that would have to go down. And that is, what is the wind-up cost and the wind-up time frame?
Yeah, we've estimated it will cost us about 100,000 to wind the place up. Currently our reserves are about 130, 140,000. So we have a little bit of headway. But we feel that we have a responsibility to people like the BIA, because we are a major part of their promotion of Sydney as a destination. So the decision to close the place has to be taken in time for them to ensure that Sydney is not promoted as part of the promotion for Sydney. Thus the comment that we probably need to allow 2 years, so that they do not include the aquarium in their publicity material.
So a wind-up period of 2 years?
I think probably 18 months to 2 years it would have to be. That's mainly tied to the BIA publicity, commissioning publicity, designing publicity, etc., to give them an opportunity to ensure that the aquarium is not included in there.
Okay, thank you. With that out of the way, I think all of us would prefer otherwise. And I want to, as others have done, thank you for the package, for the work that's been done over a number of years to bring the 85 pages before us this evening, and the way it's been laid out. And the fourth information package is the value of the centre to the community, to Sydney, and I don't think there's any question of that. There's certainly no question of that in my mind, and there's certainly no question of that in the many letters of support that you've received. However, given that the centre does have a 10-year financial history, and that we're forecasting 10 years out, the challenge, given the investment that we're being asked for on behalf of the taxpayers, is one to, as best we can, while you've worked hard to put the numbers together, is to question the sustainability. So that brings me to reference to the 10-year financial plan, and my first question is really with regards to revenue. And you've indicated 2 revenue sources in this particular plan. I appreciate, for example, on your financial statements, you have more revenue items, but this is a summary. And one of them is attendance, visitors to the centre, and the second is the retail store. So just for confirmation, for these numbers that we're looking at in the forecast, that would be both the paid visitors, coming through the front door, but the membership?
That's included in there as well, yes.
Okay. So in your package, you indicate 75,000 visitors in 2017. Would you say that it's averaged about 70,000 over the last 4 or 5 years?
70,000. 70 is
70
is more accurate in terms of the last number of years.
Okay.
Can I just say that I think I have to say I don't trust a single statistic beyond January 2018. To be honest, when we've gone back and looked at figures, we found them very suspect. And in fact, much of our work over the last year has been putting in place business systems that give us reliable figures.
Okay, appreciate.
So I think my suspicions are that if you go back 3 or 4 years, you're talking more like 60,000 visitors.
Okay, fair enough. But if we go to January 18 there, I appreciate your fiscal year is May 31st, what were your visitor count? What was your visitor count for 2018?
2018, it's just under 70,000.
It's just under
Yep.
70,000. You indicate in the information here that of that 70,000, about annually 10,000 regional students attend our programs. So those students that are 4,000
Sorry,
young.
the 10,000 applies to the whole. We've had 10,000 students come in since the centre opened over the 9 or 10 years.
Okay, well, sorry, it says annually 10,000 regional students, so it's not an annual figure.
The 10,000 is 10,000 students in facilitated programs over the multiple years.
Okay.
So that's,
So roughly the number, and then 4,000 young people attended child-oriented events like weekend activities and summer camps, and 2,700 people attended lecture series. What would that be on an annual basis or in 2018 roughly?
Yes, these were figures for 2017.
right. And sorry, are you asking what's the total or just
Well,
those facilitated program
figures
numbers?
are over many, many years.
Right.
How many students would you have had in 2017 or 18?
Between 2,000 and 3,000.
Okay.
For those would be school students on field trips.
Okay. Do you see the number of students increasing on an annual basis, or the number of young children involved in programs or adults attending lecture series?
I do, if our recent sort of feedback and response from schools is an indication of what's to come. I do see that as a real growth area.
Could I say that one of the things that we're trying to do is to be far more targeted in our marketing? When the centre was spending lots of money on marketing, it tended to be blanket marketing, big boards on the highway, etc. And we're realizing that things like TOTS Tuesdays, if we expand it to TOTS Thursdays, then we can start marketing direct at childminders and be far more specific about our marketing in the future. So we do think in a number of these areas we can indeed expand. One of the problems we have to face is with camps, because the summer camps, we have limited space to accommodate them, basically. And while we could probably bring more people into the summer camps, we'd have to look for off-site accommodation. And past experience has shown that the young people are unhappy about being off-site, they want to be in the centre. So that's a market that we could expand, but we're going to be very creative about finding how we do it and still satisfy the learners.
Okay. In your detailed assumptions, which is in the package 3, there's several, but again, I'm commenting on some directly to the revenue side, and that is no price increase is factored in. That's no price increase over 10 years?
That's correct, yeah.
Okay. And the second is, and this comes from the Grant Thornton market report that was included in its entirety in your information, it said attendance volume changes are driven by population growth projections presented in that report. And Grant Thornton from 2011 to 2016 showed 0.9% growth, so almost 1% growth a year in Sydney, and in the future has projected 1% growth for the CRD. Is that the growth figure in patrons that you're using in that top line number of attendance visitors?
We've actually used 2% for residents and 3% for tourism. Both came from the Grant Thornton. I'm sorry, it's about 9 months since I read that specific report. I think in it, when you go into the division, they foresee a much larger growth in young people and in the school population. And given that young people tend to be a primary centre of our visitors, we took the 2% figure in the expected growth area.
Okay. So in this top line figure, we also have membership, and you've indicated in the slide tonight about 4,000 members, but I saw a larger figure than that in the report here.
Well, when the membership was introduced in 2016, we were ultra generous. And you could have family membership that included not only a family of 5, but 2 grandparents. And people clicked that this was a great way of getting in the centre. And I think in the first year we sold something like 8,000 plus memberships. when we realized we were actually losing quite a bit of money by that strategy, it was revised down to a smaller family group, just 2 adults and children. And because it wasn't offering the financial benefits, a lot of visitors reverted to paying admission fees rather than taking out membership. We found we had lots of members from Europe because the families had come in and they realized it was a cheaper way to come in.
Okay. In your report, you mentioned that virtually all of your membership now, having mentioned that that other influence, is local.
The vast majority is local in terms of Central Saanich, North Saanich,
Right.
Sydney.
Okay. So, so it's local, yet you're planning for strong membership growth of 6.3%, and you're saying you have 4,000 members on the, from the peninsula already.
Yeah.
Okay. So when I look at the figure in 2028 from 2019, 10 years out, the center's revenue on that line now is 671,000, and you're forecasting it to go up exactly 50%, or up by $338,000. I just don't see how no price increase, a 2% increase in general members in patrons through the door and memberships is going to bring in that kind of sales growth.
I wish I had my Excel spreadsheet right here because
Okay.
I could check my formula.
I'll leave that with you,
Yeah,
and
okay.
if I might request
Yep.
that you provide additional information through to staff for council's use, if you could break that out,
Sure.
those numbers out by attendance,
Yep.
by membership, and so we can see the growth in those separate areas.
Absolutely. And that work is done and it feeds into that summary. I just don't have it off the top of my head.
The second line item is retail sales from the Salish Sea store. Would it be safe to say that those sales have been fairly stagnant over recent years?
Until recent.
Or fairly plateaued, not stagnant?
But I think since a change of staffing and a change of the store and the location of the store, we're seeing positive returns.
Okay. So in 2019, you're forecasting $174,000 in retail sales. I don't know what that is growth over previous year. But over the 10 years, you're forecasting an 82% increase in retail sales, an additional 142,000. Again, given the history and that you have limited space for retail, is that practical?
The way we've built it is the idea that there's a 5% increase each year with retail. I believe that's correct. And one of the strategies with that is the idea that we would also do more education resources aligned with the curriculum and some of the positive response we're getting from schools.
Okay, thank you for that top line information. I'd now like to go down to the capital investment initiatives, and in particular in the infrastructure investment. And we really appreciate receiving the full engineer's report in terms of life cycle and infrastructure replacement costs necessary in over the next several years. If I go to, and I have to find it in this package, package 2, the capital replacement, the last page. So this chart.
Yep.
So on this chart, it's nicely broken out with 16 different capital investments identified by the engineering report, running from 2019 to 2024 for 6 years. The total comes to 145,000 in the bottom right-hand corner. If you look at the capital investment initiatives sheet under infrastructure replacement, you only have 115,000 budgeted over the next six years. Difference of 35 or 40,000. Okay, if I could leave that, and perhaps you could provide that explanation with the other supplementary information.
Could I just add something here? I think probably the most significant thing here is that we now actually have a process engineer as our maintenance person, with 27 years as a petty officer engineering in the Canadian Royal Navy. who has come in and said, this place is a mess, and he's already making it better. Significant improvements. So in some ways, we're quite optimistic about this work and what it's going to cost, because the skills he brings that in the past would have to have been hired.
Okay. Last question, I believe, is bottom line. Net income in 2019, forecasting an $8,400 shortfall. Sorry, they're shaded out here. 8,000 the first year, 8,000 the second year, 6,000 the third year. In 2000, 18,000 in the sixth year. So even if the town provides the additional grant fund of 60,000 in 2019 and 140,000 in the 5 following years, you'll still have those shortfalls. And where does that come from?
In some ways, this reflects the capital work. Our goal would be to balance the books. We programmed in when we'd want to do the capital work, but if we haven't got the money, it get postponed a year to ensure that the books balance.
And just to add to that, in terms of that capital replacement plan, just since the end of November, when we hired this great new team member, we've significantly tackled 1 to 7 in that first year, and a little bit less than the costs outlined there. So we're really optimistic that this will be revisited and that this is achievable.
Yeah, I mean, in particular, in 2019 on this sheet, you have 57,000 costs of infrastructure investment, yet in the budget, you only have $5,100. So, but I'll leave that to be as you're working through it. I realize it's a period of significant change in the organization and the implications of the financial requests. So, again, wanted to ask some of the difficult questions, but we would certainly prefer to see the Sailor Sea Aquarium continue long into the future. So thank you for your presentation this evening to you both. Councillor O'Keefe?
One more question. Just in regards to the more students coming in is important. And one thing I did wonder about in the Grant Thornton report, it mentions the growth rate in the student population, but he mentions the growth rate for the Greater Victoria School District. We're not part of the Greater Victoria School District, we're part of the Saanich School District. And their growth rate is about double what ours is anticipated to be. So I don't know, when he's talking about Greater Victoria, did he actually mean School District 61, or is he speaking in more sort of generic terms?
She was talking about Greater Victoria in its entity.
In the 3 school districts?
Yes, I imagine so, yes. Yeah.
Okay. And I just wondered, so do you find that you get more Saanich Peninsula schools coming?
Typically, we get more
Okay.
closer schools, but we do
Right.
get folks coming as far.
So I guess in terms of forecasting, it seemed that the forecasts were based on School District 61, whose growth rate is probably double of what we have. Much stagnant growth rate out on the peninsula, so whether that's a factor or not.
May I observe that really our catchment area is up to Duncan. The schools from Duncan come. We have people come to TOTS Tuesday mornings from Duncan. There's never been any direct marketing there. This is the area further afield that we feel that we can expand our market significantly.
Great. Thank you very much again. The next item on the agenda is the mayor's report, and I'll be quite brief. But I think there's one particular event in the community that happened. Staff Sergeant Wayne Connolly referred to it, and I want to give I want to acknowledge the efforts of 2 particular residents, Diane and Malcolm Falconer, who approached myself in the fall and approached Mayor Jeff Orr at the same time from North Saanich regarding concerns in Seaham Harbour, whether they be with regards to navigation, the condition of various boats, whether they were abandoned or dilapidated or otherwise, sewage and other issues. And Mayor Orr and myself agreed to jointly host a CM Harbor Roundtable, which took place a week ago today, and brought 20 stakeholders and jurisdictional representatives. Given it happens on the water, there are a lot of different jurisdictions involved, and so we had Transport Canada at the meeting, the Coast Guard, the province, who has jurisdiction through Ministry of Forests, Lands, Natural Resources, RCMP. We had First Nations representatives there. Elizabeth May, our MP, Adam Olson, our MLA, Jeff Orr, myself, our two CAOs, and others. We had a 3-hour session that was very productive, and Mayor Orr and our CAOs have agreed to hold a follow-up meeting to continue to move the concerns forward, or not move the concerns, move possible solutions to the concerns forward. I'd now move to agenda item 9, councillors' reports. Are there any this evening? We'll move on to item 10, and 10A is the minutes from the Select Committee to review the Economic Development Commission from January 10th.
Move adoption. Second.
I'll just comment that the next steps from our preliminary meeting was review the results of the BIA pilot project and others that will also be addressing council at the same time. We have presentations from several different organizations associated with the economy. Identify the purpose of doing economic development. Identify what benefits economic groups are getting from SIP, and meet with former EDC participants, and we'll be continuing to do that in the coming weeks. I'll now call the question. All those in favor? Motion carries unanimous. Thank you. Move to item 10B. We have the minutes from the Advisory Planning Commission meeting from January 15th.
I'll move the minutes be received.
Second.
Comment. Call the question. All those in favor? Motion carries. Thank you.
If I could, I just wanted to mention to council one of the things that came up in the APC meeting. The meeting was an orientation meeting. They elected the chair and so on. One of the parts of the orientation was we had a discussion about council's expectations of the APC and the various questions and matters that got raised during the interviews of the various applicants. And one of the issues that came up, or concerns that came up that was discussed, was whether council was receiving essentially a complete picture of the APC discussions, and the minutes are simply the record of the motions. Their staff makes some effort to, in their reports, tell us what the substance of the APC discussions were, but it's somewhat limited, and some members felt that it was important to try to expand on that. One member of APC mentioned that in some jurisdictions, the APC chair actually presents the APC recommendations to council, and the APC chair is the one who's presenting the scope of the discussion and what the significant matters that came up at APC were. And personally, I see a certain amount of merit in that suggestion. There are some negatives as well. Certainly it's a greater level of effort on behalf of that APC member, and we did not make that obvious in the applications or even in the election of the chair. I'm also not sure that we really want to go there, but it was a suggestion that came up in the meeting, and I felt that I should make council aware of it. My thinking is that if council sees any merit in this, we should ask staff to comment on that suggestion, and we should also see if APC is actually willing to put that level of effort into it. So I'm not proposing to make any particular motion tonight, but I did want to bring it forward because it was a significant idea that came up, and it's not reflected in the minutes.
Thank you. Any comment from fellow council members? Okay, we do, We'll move to item 10C, the committee of the whole, minutes from the committee of the whole meeting January 21st.
I'll move that the minutes be received.
Second.
All discussion, all those in favor? Motion carries unanimous.
There was one recommendation coming out of Committee of the Whole, was with respect to development permit application number DP 100782 and development variance permit application number DV 100276. This is the co-housing development on Breather and 7th. And it was recommended by Committee of the Whole, and I so move that development variance permit application number DV 100279 and development variance, and development permit application number DP 100782. This is 2319 and 2325 Breather Avenue and 9927 7th Street be forwarded to the Advisory Planning Commission for further review and comment.
Second.
I'll call the question. All those in favor? Motion carries unanimous. Thank you. We'll now move to item 11, staff reports. So we have 3. The first is the tender award for the RCMP boiler replacement project.
I'll move that the contract for RCMP building boiler replacement be awarded to the low bidder, Train Canada West, for the tendered price of $156,860.50 plus taxes.
Second.
Discussion. I'll call the question. All those in favor? Motion carries unanimous. Move to item 11B, which is the 2019 Basin Bay 5K running road race.
I'll move the recommendation that Team West Coast Running and Triathlon Society be granted permission to close roads as per approved traffic plan between the hours of 11 a.m. to 12 noon on Sunday, April 14th, 2019, for the purpose of hosting the 2019 Synergy Health Management Limited Basin Bay 5K road race in Sydney, subject to the following conditions: that the society provides the town with proof of $5 million minimum liability insurance, indemnifying the town of Sydney of any liability. 2, that the society receives written permission from the Ministry of Transportation Infrastructure to use the routes within the ministry's jurisdiction and provides a copy of the approval to the town. 3, that the society notifies 2 weeks in advance all residents and businesses situated along the race route and provides a copy of the notification and confirmation of delivery 1 week prior to the event to the town. 4, that BC Transit, the Sydney Fire Department, and the ambulance services be made aware of the event and the society comply with any requirements they may have. 5, that the society receives written permission from the RCMP, including approval of the traffic management plan, a copy of approval to be submitted to the town, and the society to pay any fees, costs levied by the RCMP. And finally, 6, that no costs are to be incurred, either directly or indirectly, by the town for this event.
Second.
Discussion. I'll call the question. All those in favor? Motion carries unanimous. Thank you. I move to item 11C, the monthly building report dated December 2018.
I'll move receipt for information.
I'll call the question. All those in favor? Motion carries unanimous. Just a comment, in the calendar year 2018, we had 241 development permits issued in the town of Sydney for total value, construction value of $39,700,000. So it was a very active year of construction in the town and a very busy year for our planning and engineering related departments. So thank you for that. I'll move to item 13. We have correspondence, item 13A, the electric vehicle and electric bike infrastructure planning project, a letter from the CRD dated December 10th.
Move receipt for information.
I'll second.
Any discussion? I'll call the question. All those in favor? Motion carries unanimous. We'll move to item 14, which is bylaws, and we have one item, item 14A, bylaw number 2168, the noise amendment to the noise bylaw, amendment number 3 to the noise bylaw.
I'll move the recommendation that the bylaw be considered for adoption.
Second.
Any discussion? I'll call the question. All those in favor? Motion carries unanimous. Thank you. I'll move to item 14B, which is development variance permit application DV 100272 for 2258 Markinch Place. It was with regards to the recently built overheight fence. And there is a recommendation.
I'll move the recommendation that the variance application be approved, subject to the condition as per council's resolution number 2019.03.013.
I'll second.
Discussion? Councillor Garnett.
Kind of through you to staff, has everybody been made aware of the adjusted change to the height of the fence, and have you had any communication from any of the proposed people?
Through the mayor to Councillor Garnett. I understand that we had a phone call from one of the neighbors who was unhappy with the condition on the variance, but they chose not to write a letter in. If I could also just take this opportunity to clarify, the variance, the wording of the recommendation is for the entire rear yard fence. You can see the wording rear yard in there. So that would be everything from the rear lot line up to the back side of the house. So although the staff report does have a line on the just the rear yard fence portion in that aerial photo at the back portion, part of the retaining wall does run around the north corner of the house, and there's a portion of that north side of the fence that's overheight as well. And the variance would include bringing that down to 5 feet as well.
Thank you for that clarification. That's
Yeah, I went out there and looked around, and from my perspective, I would be happy with it staying at the height it was. I guess because I'm a taller person, but I mean, if that goes down, I'm get a lot more visibility for me. I don't know. There's no way for me to know how tall the people that are going to be moving in there are going to be and how that's going to impact them. But that's just an observation.
Any other comment? If I could just go to the 14B page related to that in the councillor package, and it shows the lot line, and just through to staff to confirm. So we see the shaded area, if you will, on Mark Inch, and again, there might have been some misunderstanding. There was with myself in terms of the east fence would be lowered by a foot if this passes.
The east fence and a portion of the north side fence.
Right, and so then
Yep.
so then going to the north side, just a portion of that north fence?
Everything up to the retaining wall ends approximately at where the house starts.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
So if they wanted to, they could leave the 6-foot fence past the backside of the house, going out to Markinch the street.
Because it's not on a retaining and it's just
That's
between
right.
the houses. Okay.
I think it would look possibly sort of odd, but
Okay, and in my on-site observations, am I correct on the south portion that because of the elevation change between the property under discussion and the adjacent property south and the elevation change, the fence is actually higher than both the back fence and the north fence?
I believe the top rail of the fence is the same height all the way around. The fence, if I understand you correctly, the fence at the south side of the property was built at the existing grade. So that could stay at the 6 feet. But the rest of it mostly would need to come down to the 5 foot if the condition is approved.
Okay.
Does that?
There is a higher fence there, and I'm not sure whose fence it is.
That might be the adjacent property.
Right.
Yeah.
So anyway, at any rate, the fence is higher because of the grade change
That's right,
to
yeah.
the south. So I put forth that I think, given its location in this neighborhood, that I would continue to support to leave the fence as it is. Any further discussion? Yes.
Just one more thing to add to it, and it's just, I guess this is why I kind of was not for this development in the first place. Is too many houses in too tight of a spot, so you have people on top of each other, and this is what results. So I tend to agree with the mayor that I'd be happy to leave it as it is.
Councillor Keith?
I would just say I would also agree with Councillor Garnett and Mr. Mayor.
Further comment? I'll call the question. All those in favor? We have 2. Those opposed?
Scott works the room, what can you say?
Okay. So the motion is defeated, 5-2.
Could I ask kind of where things go from here? Because we've now got a fence that's over what's permitted. There's no variance application that's being submitted, and we've just denied the approval of what was advertised as a variance. We can't, as far as I understand, spontaneously approve a variance that hasn't, where the notice hasn't gone out to the neighborhood. So I guess I'm looking for some guidance from staff.
Yeah, it's a difficult situation because the variance has been denied. So technically, the entire fence needs to come down now.
Could I ask, the motion was defeated, but I didn't actually hear a motion denying the variance. It was this particular motion, which has a subject to condition, that was defeated.
Yeah, so it's at
So can we
Do
just-
we have the opportunity?
for that, for this variance here, sorry.
So through you to staff, does council have the option of putting forward a motion to advertise the variance as submitted?
See,
Sorry, a question through the staff. So just for clarification, the original variance request was to leave the fence as is, and then the staff provided a report and a recommendation, and we've turned down the recommendation, or sorry, turned down the
recommendation.
Yeah, the recommendation. So would we still have to pass a motion on the variance, which is?
So the original application came in as an application to maintain the fence as it is currently, which is approximately an 8-foot fence. It varies across the property. I would guess the motion that initiated the notification from the last council meeting, that motion included the condition, I believe, to reduce the fence height. And so that's the way the notification went out and was advertised to the community. Correct me if I'm wrong, corporate officer.
Somebody, if you voted on the side that prevailed, can.
A procedural question through the staff. Are we able to receive the motion just that we voted on?
You want it read out?
No.
No.
Are we able to rescind procedurally? Can we rescind the motion that we just voted on?
Yeah, you can rescind.
And if we did that, would we then be able to pass a subsequent motion approving the original variance request?
If
Questions?
I would, yeah. The concern is, do you have to repost the notice? Right, because the notice has gone out, yeah, based on that condition. So I think at minimum, a new notice should go out.
So we would, if we rescinded the motion we just voted on, we could pass a motion to send a notice out for the original variance request?
I mean, procedurally, I think that's probably the safest thing to do, and go through the notice period again.
But I beg your pardon, through the mayor, do we need to rescind the motion to accomplish that? Could you not?
Because you've done nothing.
So,
Well, you haven't approved it or denied
Yeah.
it.
I'll move that the variance application, that the notice be sent out for the variance application, and that council consider approval after the period of comment has passed.
I'll second that.
Further discussion? I'll call the question. All those in favor? Motion carries unanimous. Thank you. Thank you to staff for your help on that. I'll now move to item 14C, which is the development variance permit application number DV 100273 for 2345 Oakville Avenue.
I move that the variance application be approved.
Second?
Discussion? Councillor O'Keefe?
Is this, we got some late breaking correspondence on this, is that correct?
Yeah.
So that was from 3 residents who were not in favor?
Multiple residents.
3,
about
eight, 10?
We have 2 letters.
2 letters.
We had 2 letters with 10 multiple signatures, I believe 10, and then we had well, it wasn't speaking directly to it this evening. Councillor O'Keefe, did you have a...
Yeah, no, and I guess I'm just noting that in these cases, the residents did express concern about the extra height of that would be required for this variance. So that is a concern.
Councillor Wainwright.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So the extra height is 2.6 feet, and it's strictly the peak of the roof. Technically, it goes from 2.5 stories to 3 stories, but the height is not dramatically more than previously. I think, and the letter with the greatest number of signatures is about setting a precedent of by having a 3-story house approved. But the precedent we're actually setting is about 2.6 feet to the peak of the roof. I don't really find that as compelling, and this letter came in very much at the last minute, and I confess I have a concern that there may be an overreaction to 3-story without actually having looked carefully that we're talking 2.6 feet and strictly the peak of the roof. They're not changing the floor plan to actually add another story to the house. They're raising the height so that they don't have to actively pump the perimeter drain, the drainage. So there's actually no, there isn't a redesign adding a story. And I think that I'm looking at this as likely a misunderstanding. But because it was received late in the afternoon today, we really haven't had a chance to engage with these residents and make sure that that they are all actually as concerned as this letter indicates. The other letter that we've got 3 signatures on is suggesting that we should make them pump as opposed to allowing the small amount of additional height so it drains by gravity. You know, from the energy efficiency point of view and just the security of having it operate during a power failure and the rest of it, I really don't like the solution of telling them go install a pump and make sure the pump's operating all the time. I would point out that the other option that the proponent has is to modify the roof to make the building more ugly. And for example, the flat roof kind of approach that many others in this general neighborhood have done, and I really do not want to encourage that one as well. So the option of a couple of extra feet just at the very peak, I'm willing to support. And I would be prepared, if council feels strongly, to delay this so that we can have some engagement with the people that have expressed these concerns. But this is one that I'm actually comfortable asking forgiveness later and explaining why I'm willing to approve it despite their letters.
Further comment, Councillor Fallon?
Thank you. I concur with what Councillor Wainwright was saying. These letters did come in late. I would have liked to have been able to speak to at least one or two of the individuals and hopefully clarify or explain what it is. When I looked at this request 2-3 weeks ago, what was compelling for me was that there was going to be a suite in these houses, and as we heard earlier on this evening, we're looking for employees in this town and we need a variety of housing, and I think for the amount of extra height and for the mass of the rooftop, it's a price I think as a community we should be willing to pay for that. Architecturally, it provides some variance, and I think that also makes our town more attractive and interesting. Yes, we could deny this and say, do whatever it is you need to do. I don't think in the long run our community wins. So I'm not going to be long-winded. I will end it at that point. I will support.
Councillor Garnett and Councillor Duncan?
Walk the neighborhood. I'm a stickler for bylaws, and it yet may only be 2.6 feet, but it does make a difference to the people that live in the neighborhood. And we're already putting 2 houses on what really is not a huge lot. So standing there looking at it, I was trying to picture and envision what it would look like when it's done, and I'm not comfortable with going to 3 stories. There are options. I know they're not the greatest options in the world, but they do have options. If they had no options, I probably would be in agreement with you. And you can still have the suites with those options. But 3 stories is, once we get 3 stories in a single residential house, I'm just not prepared to go there, so I won't be supporting it.
Councillor Duncan?
I will be supporting it for all of the reasons Councillor Wainwright expanded on. They were all the same reasons that we discussed the first time we saw this variance, and I didn't see any new objections or new information, new ways of looking at it from these letters that we had not already discussed at the first reading of this variance application. As Councillor Fallon brings up, the fact that there are suites beneath there, and having rental suites is very important. Pumping is not really an option when you're talking about where somebody's living in a basement suite and you're depending on a pump to keep you from flooding out all the time. And knowing that climate change and sea level rise is coming, the idea that we should be trying to make sure that if we are setting a precedent, the precedent should be that we are building houses that are more resilient to those changes, not less. So I will be supporting this. There was one objection that was raised in the letter that I feel we just need to make sure that the residents understand, is that this area was zoned to be able to build larger houses, higher houses, or more density. And one of the objections that it would be shading out the people's house next door, and that would not have to do with the variance to go up 2.5 feet at the peak of the roof. Whether or not they go up 2.5 feet, if we denied them that variance, they're still going to build a house that's 2.5 stories high. It's still going to be a larger house that's next to them. So whether or not we approve the variance, that's still going to happen, and that's not really something we can prevent or cause by approving this. So,
Councillor Rintoul?
Thank you. Through the mayor to staff, if I can, just to clarify, if it weren't for the intent to subdivide the lot, if I'm not mistaken, a single-family dwelling on the property wouldn't have required a variance at any rate and could have been built above this 2.5 feet threshold. Is that not correct?
Through the mayor to Councillor Rintoul, yes. For properties over 400 square meters, which this property is in its current state, pre-subdivision, you can build up to 9 meters, which is approximately 30 feet.
Yep. Thank you.
Sorry, I should clarify, that's for a pitched roof. A flat roof would be 8 meters.
And a question through the staff. Sorry, the height of this proposed development then is in comparison to what you just said?
The requested height through the variance is 8.8 meters to the peak of the roof.
And sorry, you mentioned 30 feet. Sorry, if I could have
So-
both in meters or both in feet.
Okay. On the full-size pre-subdivided lot, the maximum height for a house with a pitched roof would be 9 meters or 29.6 feet, if memory serves. A flat roof would be 8 meters or 26.5 feet approximately. Once you subdivide the lot into these smaller lots, the zoning bylaw only permits the 8 meter, 26.5 foot height maximum, flat or pitched.
A subsequent question through the staff is why that change? What's the rationale for the shorter height on the on a subdivided lot?
Just because the density of the houses on the subdivided lot is slightly greater. Overall, there's sort of more going on, and bringing the scale of the houses down a little bit, I guess, was thought to be moderating the scale.
So it would affect mass.
Yeah.
Another last question through the staff is appreciating the zoning. The zoning is height. The heights that you've just referred to. Does it include number of stories?
The height and number of stories are separate sort of line items in the zoning bylaw.
So
if that answers his question.
So when this area was rezoned some time ago to 2.5 stories, that's the zoned height. So we're giving a variance not only in the height, but we're giving a variance from 2.5 to 3 stories.
Yes, the way that the zoning bylaw calculates grade, it's a measure from existing grade to the ceiling of the lowest story. And so because raising the whole house out of grade by 0.8 meters brings the ceiling of the lowest story above what it can be to be considered a half story, it becomes the first story. The first story becomes the second story, and the top story becomes the third story, just because of that 0.8 meter grade change, height change in relation to grade.
So if there was a proposal on the same lot to be under the height limit, could they build 3 stories?
No.
Okay, thank you. My comment is on this is that I don't agree setting a precedent to variance to 3 stories from 2.5 stories. I think the area was rezoned for increased density in terms of allowing smaller lot sizes and allowing the 2.5 stories, which allows the additional rental units. I fully appreciate the benefit to the community in terms of additional rental units in properties such as this. I can remember a precedent at Oakville Mews being built several years ago that's 2.5 stories and appears to be very successful. But I think a precedent of 3 stories is, if we grant this one at 2.5 feet, somebody can come, the next person can come with 3 feet or what have you, and we'd be giving similar variances. So I won't be supporting this variance request. Any further comment? I'll call the question. All those in favor? Those opposed? The motion passes 5-2. We now have raised item 16.4 into new business, which is number 15.
Sorry, 14D.
Sorry, I'd like to now move to 14D. Development variance permit application number DV 100277 10148 Bower Bank Road.
I'll move that the variance application be approved.
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor? Motion carries unanimous. I would now like to move to item 15, where we moved item 16.4 into new business when approving the agenda. And that is the email from correspondence from Mr. G. Thompson.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. With respect to the letter, I wanted to just speak to the aspect here specifically around garbage and in general the unkempt conditions in the area, and with an aim perhaps to give it consideration as part of the budgetary process. I note that Sydney retailers certainly had expressed concern for the state of cleanliness in the downtown core. In addition to this comment, I note in the budget there was some allocation of resources, perhaps additional, to provide additional cleaning measures to the downtown core, but that this area likely wasn't part of that consideration. And if not, do we have sufficient resources in the budget to try and address suggestions such as this one, just around general upkeep in the town and garbage items of that nature? So perhaps if I could refer that through staff.
Do you want to speak to it? Sure. Through the chair to Councillor Chad. Certainly on a case-by-case issue on the Lochside Trail, which is managed and maintained by the CRD, if we did get like a spot accumulation of garbage that had occurred overnight, a serious dumping or something like that, and the phone came into the municipality, we would react to that. Of course, by the time the CRD got involved and got their staff down to deal with it, it could be a day or two, depending on their capacity to deal with that. So the one-ofs, the heavy concentrations, the spot dumpings, will take care of that on a basis based on complaint. And certainly stewardship that comes in, we hear lots of times about people doing their little bit of civic duty to pick that stuff up. Maybe we could try to encourage something like that in the future. The only other thing would be to be a little bit more proactive with the CRD and see whether or not that'll change. Certainly, as well, the CRD is just finishing up a bike refuge, a little bit of a storage area there by the Mary Winspear. There would be the opportunity to put a receptacle there. That might be something that we could look at again and seeing what we can do to hit that one level of concentration, and maybe have one more receptacle close to where those fast food outlets are.
Thank you to the mayor, to staff. I think that's probably a good suggestion. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Duncan, you had an item that you wish to bring to raise in 16. If you could pass a motion to raise it.
Pass a motion to raise item 16.1, the Leonard West Coast Environmental Law.
Second, any discussion? All those in favor? Motion carries. Councillor Duncan?
So what they've done, and I understand they've been sending these letters out to all the municipalities, is to send them out and request that we write a letter to 20 largest fossil fuel companies, basically telling them, shaking our fingers at them more than anything else, and telling them we expect that they should start paying damages for the emissions they've knowingly caused, since they knew they were contributing to global warming, and that they should help pay for basically the infrastructure upgrades that are going to be required to protect our cities. And additional actions, which is the class action lawsuit that Victoria has just approved, having their staff investigate. I don't even have my speaker on. I don't know if it matters. And I was going to say, I feel I may be in favor of writing a letter. Just simply, it keeps it in the news. It's a bit of pressure. It might incent the fossil fuel companies and their shareholders to voluntarily do something. But when it comes to trying to join a class action lawsuit, I'm going to hope that we have a united front against joining such a thing, just due to the cost of that and the likelihood of it not going anywhere.
A question for myself to Councillor Duncan. Mm-hmm. Would the letter be requesting specific action that we would expect a response on from the company?
I believe I should have gone and gotten some examples from the other municipalities who had written them. Basically, they were asking them to voluntarily take initiative and begin providing funds, setting funds aside to help municipalities. I know that some of the municipalities did receive responses from them saying, you're right, we should, but whether they've actually committed to anything, I don't know. And so that was one of the things that I was going to say. I would, if we are interested in that, knowing that staff's time is precious, volunteer to take on kind of researching more what could be included in such a letter and what kind of merit they would have about actually being able to get an action.
Second part of if I can ask for clarification with regards to joining class action, how would you consider proceeding?
I would not. I know that other municipalities, Victoria recently had passed that they were going to investigate it, and in the news and the discussions kind of trying to encourage other municipalities, and through UBCM trying to get people to join, and just wanted to kind of bump it up onto our radar because I don't think we should join, and that probably would surprise people knowing me, but I don't think we should join a class action lawsuit about that.
Okay, so thanks for that clarification. Having indicated your acknowledgement of the staff time to the initiative, if we're not willing to request a staff time on this at the moment, could I perhaps suggest we refer the idea to strategic planning?
To write a letter?
No, the idea and
of additional.
I think we need to perhaps think it through in terms of our own climate action plan and initiatives within the community.
Yeah, in favor of that. Yeah.
Okay, so I don't think we need a motion on that. Okay, thank you. Thank you for raising it. And now look for a motion. Move to item 16. Motion for receiving correspondence for information.
Second.
Discussion. All those in favor? Motion carries unanimous. Thank you. We have no notices of motion or no motion in camera. I request a motion for adjournment.
So moved.
Second. In favor. Thank you. Thank you, everyone.